Story 1. Chose to stay with dad after their divorce for practical reasons. My mom sees it as betrayal, and now treats me like a stranger. I know it sounds bad, and trust me, I regret a lot of things. Everything became so hard after my parents got divorced when I was 13. My childhood had been genuinely happy, and I was always closest to my mom. The divorce hit me so much harder than it did my older sister, Penny, who's 21 now. She just seemed to take it in stride, while I was completely lost. My mom moved out into an apartment and was swallowed up by this heavy, bitter depression. She drank a lot, and everything was just a mess. We were supposed to be with each parent 50-50, but the schedule was so annoying. I'd have to switch houses every 2 or 3 days, and because I went to a private school with uniforms, I was always in trouble for leaving things at the wrong house or not having what I needed. Then, out of nowhere, my mom moved 45 minutes away from my school. To solve things, they gave Penny a car so she could drive us, but since she didn't play sports and I did, she didn't want to hang around for me after practice. I was always waiting, sometimes stranded, and would just end up at my dad's house anyway. So eventually, I asked if I could stay with dad on weekdays and mom on weekends, just to make things easier. My dad wasn't thrilled about only having me for school days, so the compromise was me spending 1 weekend a month with him, and the other 3 with her. At first I thought it was great, but I could sense my mom seemed less fond of me, even if I didn't want to admit it. Penny was supposed to drive me, but sports kept messing with the routine. Some weekends, I'd call mom for a ride and she wouldn't be able to make it. I started spending even less time at her place. She and Penny got a lot closer. Penny only came to my dad's every other weekend by that point. Things came to a head in my sophomore year. I had a huge game, semifinals for state, and I was on varsity, and my mom didn't come. Instead, she was taking Penny prom dress shopping. I was going to prom too. I was dating a junior, so I tried to see if we could all go another time, but she just told me to ask dad. She was the one who got me into sports, always went to my games, so not seeing her there wrecked me. I played horribly, my mind spinning, waiting for her to show up, but she never did. After that, I just stopped going to her house altogether. We'd call now and then, see each other for holidays, but the distance never closed. I was so hurt, and she never apologized. But I still love her, and we're civil when we do see one another, even if it's not often. Lately, everything's been piling up. I lost a close friend. My dad's new girlfriend moved in, and I get the feeling she wants me out. It's complicated. She'll get mad if I don't clean up, but when I do, she'll snap and say things like, "You're not your dad's wife." I just keep trying to navigate it. And now, my mom is doing great. She remarried about a year ago and her new husband has 2 kids, Jake and Emma, 10 and 12. They're nice enough, but I barely know them. Before Christmas, my mom asked me if I could give Emma one of my old American Girl dolls. It wasn't an heirloom or anything, but it used to be my cousin's, and I just didn't feel comfortable handing it over to a virtual stranger. So I told her no, not mean, just honest. It's not like Emma couldn't get her own, honestly. After that, things got weird. I kept asking mom about Christmas plans, trying to find out where I should be and when, and she just never really answered. Normally I'd spend Christmas Eve with her, but she wouldn't tell me what was going on. On Christmas Eve, I texted her, asking when I could give her gift, and she said she'd reach back out after the holidays. That hurt in a way I can't even explain, because never before had my mom not taken my calls or refused to see me. I figured maybe it was about the doll. Maybe I should have given her space, but I couldn't help myself, and texted her Happy New Year anyway. Then Penny came tearing into my life. She was furious, drove all the way over to scream at me. She told me I had to stop upsetting mom, that I'd broken her heart by picking dad. I tried to tell her it wasn't like that, but she hit me with something I never saw coming, that the divorce happened because dad had an affair, and I was an idiot for not figuring it out. Nobody ever told me that before. Dad hadn't dated anyone that I knew of until recently. I completely lost it. I told her to leave, clutching my mom's gift in my hand, too upset to give it to anyone. I haven't told my dad about any of it, but I've been drowning in guilt and sadness. I never wanted to hurt my mom, not ever. But now I feel like she's moved on without me. I see the photos she posts, her husband and his kids, Penny always there. It feels like there's no place for me anymore. And the worst part is, I keep thinking this is all my fault. Update 1. I talked to my parents, and it was absolutely awful. I finally confronted my dad about what my sister told me, and he admitted everything was true. Hearing him say it out loud hurt more than I expected. It brought back everything from a few months ago when my boyfriend cheated on me. That pain had still been raw, but my dad had actually helped me through it, made me feel safe. To hear he'd betrayed my mom, our family, felt like a punch in the gut. I also told him what his girlfriend had been saying to me, all the passive comments and backhanded things. He was upset by it, promised he'd handle it and talk to her. She does seem to be acting a little nicer these days, but honestly, I still don't trust her at all. My relationship with my dad is complicated now. I'm still hurt by what he did, but at the same time, I can't help but wonder if maybe he could still be a good dad and just not a good husband. Maybe people are worn out by each other. Or maybe his girlfriend is what he deserves. That sounds mean, but these are the things that rattle around in my head. Unfortunately, things with my mom have gotten even worse. We always had our Christmas tradition of going to the ballet together, it was our special thing. But a few years back, after my parents' divorce, she suddenly didn't want to go anymore. She just dropped it. I kept asking for a while, but she always had an excuse. Then last week, she made this post with Penny and Emma, her stepdaughter, the one she wanted me to give my old childhood doll to. And there they were, at the ballet. The very thing she refused to share with me anymore. The next day, when I saw Penny, I felt like she was waiting for me to bring it up, but I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. She asked me if I wanted to go in on Mom's birthday present, since it's coming up. I threw it back, asked if I'd even be invited to the party or dinner. She said that shouldn't matter, so I told her I wasn't getting Mom anything for events I'm not even invited to. I got her a Christmas present with no invitation over. I got her a wedding present but wasn't invited. Penny finally admitted Mom didn't invite me to her wedding because she didn't want me reporting anything back to my dad, she just wanted to enjoy eloping in the Caribbean without worrying about what her ex might hear. That stung so badly I called my mom about it. I could tell from her tone she was annoyed, but she said we could meet as long as I promised to listen. So I drove all the way to see her, and the whole time she was lecturing me about boundaries, how if I wanted her in my life I'd have to respect her terms, including giving her 3 days notice before seeing her, no last minute, and always including Emma in anything we did. I just snapped internally. I asked her again, straight up, about the wedding, and she admitted she just wanted to have her day, after everything. I have never once gossiped about my parents to each other, not once, not even when one of them wanted me to. And here was my own mother, caring more about her ex potentially finding out about her wedding than having her own daughter there. That was my breaking point. I know I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help it. I let it all out, all the exhaustion, all the pain of trying for years to get her to love me again. For what? She clearly doesn't want me around, so I told her that. I told her she could have fun with my replacement, but it would never be the same because Emma isn't her daughter, I am, and I'll always love my own mother more, no matter what. I told her my friends' moms bend over backward to spend time with their daughters, and I have to beg for scraps. There was so much more I wish I had the strength to say. I wish I'd told her where to shove her boundaries, but I just didn't have any juice left. But I did tell her she should forget she ever had me, then I left. She kept calling, and I looked it up. I'm 19, I can block her. And that's what I did. Penny and her husband started blowing up my phone next, but I told them if Mom wants boundaries, I'll have some too. She needs to respect mine. It's been really hard. I have a therapist who helps me sometimes, and honestly, I think cutting my mom out is the healthiest choice long term. I don't want to end up like her. If Penny wants to write me off, so be it. I have my friends, and we've decided to get an apartment together this summer. I think that will be good for all of us. When I told Dad, I could see he was sad, but I need to start my own life. It's true he'll be paying my rent, so part of me feels guilty, but we promise to have dinner at least twice a week. Even with everything that's happened, he's always shown up for me in a way my mom never has. Honestly, after learning what she's really like, I don't even blame him for what happened. I didn't know before, but I meant it, I really don't blame him. He actually seems to care. He's told me if his girlfriend says anything else off to me, I can tell him right away. She said she's new to this whole step-parenting thing and apologized, but I'm just not a fan of hers. Maybe it's just space, maybe moving out will help. I hope so. Update 2. I thought blocking my mom would give me quiet, but the universe apparently heard quiet and said actually, chaos. 2 days after I blocked her, I got a text from an unknown number that just said, "Hi. It's Emma. Can we talk?" It's not about the doll, I promise. I stared at it for a while, because I didn't know what to do with that, but she followed up with a photo of this tiny cardigan from an American Girl set and said, "I think this is yours." I told her she didn't have to give me anything and she said she knew, but could we meet somewhere public because she didn't want to get in trouble if her mom found out. We met by the fountain at the outdoor mall near my dad's. She looked nervous and 12 in the most literal way, chewed sleeve, little backpack, eyes darting around. She handed me the tiny sweater and a crumpled piece of stationery that had my mom's handwriting on it. It was a note to Emma, telling her to show Penny what her sister got her and to be careful brushing the doll's hair because it tangles. I felt really weird holding something my mom wrote, to another kid, about me like I'd been part of the gift. I told Emma I hadn't given her the doll and she said she figured that out because Mom didn't know the doll's name and kept calling it her doll like it was a family pet. Then she said she didn't want me to be mad at her because she actually liked it, but the note made her feel bad. I told her I wasn't mad at her at all, not even a little bit. I asked if my mom was okay, and she shrugged and told me Mom cries a lot when she thinks no one's around, and then said she wasn't supposed to tell me that, and could I please not say anything, and I promised I wouldn't. When I got home, Dad's girlfriend was setting the table and everything felt off, too many plates, too many napkins, like a party I hadn't RSVP'd to. I helped carry things, and she kept fussing over me, asking if I needed water, if I was okay, if I liked the roasted carrots, and I knew something was coming. After dinner she put her hand on my dad's arm and said they had news, and she said it in that bright voice people use for gender reveals, and then she said she was pregnant. The room went silent, even the clock sounded like it paused mid-tick. My dad didn't smile, not at first, He looked at me. I think he knew immediately that this was going to change everything for me, and I hated how I could see the battle in his face between being someone's excited almost dad and my dad. I said congratulations because I'm not a monster, but it felt like someone was rearranging the furniture in my life without asking, again. She started talking about due dates and nausea like we were all already in on it, like this was some show we'd been watching together, and I just told my dad I needed to be somewhere else. I called my friend and asked if maybe we can move in early if the spring subletter leave situation had become a yes, and we made it a yes. I started boxing up my room that night. I told Dad I love him, and I do, and that I'd text him the new address and the nights for dinner once I knew them, but I couldn't keep doing the emotional hopscotch in that house with a woman who vacuums my doorway so the line between her space and mine is always visible, and now a baby on the way. He helped me carry everything to the car, and he cried in the driveway, which I didn't expect. He said he was going to be a better father than he'd been a husband and asked me not to disappear on him, and I promised I wouldn't. His girlfriend watched from the window with her hand on her stomach like it was a value proposition. The sublet is tiny and smells like someone else's detergent, but it's mine in the way my lungs feel like mine after a run. We shoved a futon into the corner and hung a thrifted curtain so my room feels real, and I put the little doll sweater on my lamp because I don't know, it made me feel like I could reclaim at least one thing people kept trying to rebrand in my name. I slept like the kind of sleep you only get after crying in a moving car. The next morning, my grandmother called from an actual landline. I hadn't talked to her in months, not because I don't love her, but because everything with my mom bleeds onto everyone around her. She said she heard I was moving out and asked if I could come by for tea. Her house is the one place that hasn't changed, the same ivy on the fence, the same lemon cookies in the blue tin that used to hold sewing things. She put her hand on my cheek and told me I looked tired, and then she did what moms do in my head when I make them up, fed me without making it a performance. We talked about school in the apartment and she asked if I felt safe. I told her yes. She asked if anyone had been asking me for money or favors or guilt I didn't know, and I laughed because she knew exactly where to poke. She told me she knew about the wedding. She said she hadn't gone either, not because she wasn't invited, but because she refused to go to a vacation version of a wedding while her granddaughter sat home. She pulled an envelope out of the drawer and slid it to me, and it was 2 tickets to the ballet in February. I saw the poster and thought of you, she said, like it was the simplest thing in the world. I didn't even decide, I just went. I put on the only dress I didn't leave behind and wore my hair the way my mom always used to braid it for me, even though that felt like stitching an old memory to a new one, and I met my grandmother on the steps. It was weird and beautiful and painful in that way where your chest feels too big and too small at the same time. We took our seats and it felt like being inside a snow globe the way the lights came up. At intermission, we were walking the lobby and I heard Penny say my name like she'd swallowed it wrong. My mom was there with Penny and Emma, and for a second, everything froze, the way it does in a dream right before you realize you're dreaming. My mom looked at me like she'd seen a ghost, then like she'd seen an animal in the road and wasn't sure if it would dart or bolt. She stepped toward me like she was approaching a skittish thing and said my name very quietly. I said hi. She looked at the tickets in my hand and then at my grandmother and it registered, I think, that she wasn't in control of this scene at all. She started with the same script, how she wished I had told her I was going to be there so she could have made sure Emma was part of the plan, how she would have appreciated some heads up, like the ballet was her living room and not a public building where people can buy tickets. I felt that snapping, that spark that says do not do this again to yourself, do not let her pull you into the maze. So I said, I'm here with Grandma. That's all. My grandmother took my hand, and it was such a small thing, but I could feel the shift when she did it. My mom's face went flat in that way she does when she's deciding whether to be wounded or angry. Emma ducked around Penny and hugged me. She just wrapped her arms around me and said, you look pretty, right into my collarbone like we'd known each other forever. My mom told her to come back, and Emma did, because she's 12 and that's how it works, but she gave me that look kids have when they've decided you're safe, and it split me wide open and stitched me back up all in 1 second. We didn't argue. We didn't hash anything out by the fountain. My mom said, we can talk if you're ready, and I said, maybe another time, and I meant it. I don't know if that means next month or in 5 years, but I did know her my intermission. Penny looked like she had 100 speeches lined up behind her teeth, but she didn't use any of them. She just watched me. I don't know what she saw. After the show, there was a paper bag tucked under my windshield wiper. It had the ballet program from the first time my mom took me, the one with the chocolate stain in the corner from when I was 7 and couldn't sit still and dropped a truffle, and a picture of us in the lobby with my hair in a messy braid. There wasn't a note, no instructions, no terms, just the things. I think she wanted me to see that once upon a time she did try. I think she wanted me to remember what she remembers. I took the picture and the program home and put them on my dresser next to the little sweater and I let them all sit there, all those versions of me and my mom staring at each other. The next morning, Dad texted to ask if I was okay, and I told him about the ballet and that I was okay, actually. He asked if he could stop by and bring a coffee and see the apartment like a normal dad, and he did, and he didn't mention the pregnancy once. He asked if my futon was hurting my back, and when I said yes, he said, okay, I can fix that, and I believed him. Later, I got an email from my mom because I guess that's how you politely break through a block. It was just a line, I'm glad you went. No boundaries, no conditions, no 3-day notice language, just that. I still don't know what to do with it. I don't know if she sent it because she's changing or because she saw that nothing she could say would change what's happening, which is that I'm finally building things that don't require her permission. I didn't reply. I closed my laptop and went to the kitchen and ate leftover pasta with my roommate at the counter like we were in a movie about girls who figure it out in their 20s. I keep thinking about how everyone keeps handing me things with my name on them that I didn't ask for, the doll, the baby, the boundaries, and then this week, for the first time in a long time, I got to choose what I wanted to hold. I picked the tickets. I picked my grandma's hand. I picked the little sweater on my lamp. It felt small and huge at the same time. I don't know what comes next, but for once, I'm not bracing for it like a punch. I'm making dinner plans and looking at rugs and looking forward to spring. And if my mom decides she wants to meet me somewhere public with no rules but basic human kindness, maybe we'll start there. If not, I'll still be here, in my little place, with my lamp glowing warm and a program that reminds me I wasn't wrong about what we had. It just didn't stay. Update 3. I thought the one-line email would be the end of it for a while, like a period you can step over, but then my phone lit up with a name I still don't like seeing and a text that said, "Are you home?" It was my dad's girlfriend. I almost didn't answer because my gut does this instant flinch with her, but then she sent, I think, "Something's wrong," and every other feeling I had just shut up. She was alone. He was in a meeting 2 cities over. There was spotting and a voice that kept trying not to shake and losing. Hospitals at noon are the strangest kind of bright. Everything hums. The nurse put us in a room with a poster about hand washing that was way too cheerful, and I held a little plastic cup of water like it was going to tell me what to do. When the tech put the cold gel on her stomach, she grabbed my wrist like I was a railing on a ferry and we both had to pretend we weren't scared. There was a second where it was just static and my chest went hot and hollow, and then the screen flickered and you could hear it, a fast, watery thrum, like a kid bouncing a ball in an empty gym. I didn't expect to cry. I did anyway, quietly, because it felt rude not to. We sat in that paper crinkly silence after and she apologized like she broke a glass. She said, "I know you don't like me," which is such a blunt sentence it landed like a book. She told me she wasn't around back then, that she knew about the affair from my dad and that it wasn't her. She said it like she could put the words between us and we'd both stop bleeding on them. She told me her own stepmom had been the kind of person who marked her territory in toothbrush holder inches and chore charts and the last thing she wanted was to be that cliché with nicer throw pillows, and then she looked at her hands and said, "I think I've been that anyway. I'm sorry." I didn't forgive her, not like a switch, but something unclenched. We drove home with a paper bag of saltines and some instructions and a photo that looks like a moon rock. She made me come upstairs and sit down so she could hand me a blanket like she'd practiced being gentle and wanted to try it out on someone. When my dad finally burst through the door half an hour later, he looked at her, then me, then the doctor's printout, and I watched his face do that impossible math of two things mattering hugely at the same time. He kissed the top of my head like I was still 10 and whispered, "Thank you," into my hair. I wanted to be mad that gratitude felt so good. I went home to my little apartment and the futon did that thing where it announces its metal bones every time you breathe. The next day a delivery truck double parked outside and a guy with forearms like tree trunks hauled a real mattress up my stupid narrow stairs like it was nothing. There was a note taped under the plastic, my dad's handwriting, just, "Okay, I can fix that." He still didn't mention the baby. We installed it together, if you can call it installing, to cut plastic and wait for foam to inhale itself. He took his shoes off at the door without being told and complimented my thrift store lamp in a way that didn't make it sound like I was a raccoon with a budget. 2 days later I got another unknown number, and my stomach did the bad circus thing, but it was Emma again. "Do you know how to make a family tree?" she wrote. Then, they said it has to go on a poster. She sent a picture of a worksheet with little boxes and the word half in parentheses next to sibling, neatly printed by someone who loves to underline. Her mom told her to leave my box blank and she didn't want to. "Can I come over instead of the library?" she asked, because the librarian knows my mom now, like that was a thing in the world a 12-year-old should have to consider. She came to the apartment in a hoodie with stars on the sleeves and immediately hung up her backpack on the back of the chair like she was respecting the space of a tiny museum. We ate orange slices out of a bowl because I wanted there to be some kind of snack and that was what I had. We cut little squares from junk mail and glued them in the right places and I said, "You don't have to write the word half if you don't want to," and she looked relieved and wrote "sister," just that, and drew a heart without making eye contact like the heart would be too loud. My door buzzer started shrieking like it had a problem with the world and when I pressed the button, my mom's voice came through tinny and staticky, asking to be let up. That old instinct, to scramble, to tidy the air, to pre-apologize, hit me so hard I wanted to sit down. I opened anyway, because I live here, and she walked in with her mouth set like she was bracing for a pain she planned to tell me I caused. She looked around like the apartment might be a trick. She saw the poster board and the glue stick and her daughter's handwriting, and for a second I thought she might smile. Then she didn't. "This is exactly what I asked you not to do," she said, not loud but heavy. Emma froze. For a beat I could see all the futures, the crying one, the begging one, the one where I make a soft thing out of myself and lay down so she can walk over it. I picked a different one. "We're making a school project," I said. There are no rules here except be kind and don't burn the place down. You can stay or go, but we're finishing this. She looked at me like I'd switched languages. My grandma always says the trick to an argument with someone who packs an argument like a go bag is to pull all the zippers and quietly tip it out on the floor. My mom opened and closed her mouth and then, this felt like an eclipse, her husband stepped into the doorway behind her with his keys still in his hand. He didn't try to be anyone's new father or old referee. He said, "We don't punish kids for wanting to draw the people they love," and my mom's shoulders did a tiny drop, like a coat, slipping off a hook. She didn't apologize. She sat down on the arm of my chair and watched Emma draw a little tree that looked nothing like a tree and everything like a map. She didn't try to add rules. She just sat there and breathed for once without making it a test. When they left, my mom paused with her hand on the knob like a person in a movie who is about to say the thing and then chooses not to. She said, "You have a nice place," the way people say nice about a haircut they can't fix. I said, "Thanks," and reminded myself that I don't have to turn crumbs into bread anymore. That night, an email came. Longer than the last one. No subject line, just a block of text like a dam giving way. She wrote about the apartment she moved into after the split with a window that wouldn't open and how the laundry room ate quarters and socks equally. She told me she still has my 3rd grade note where I wrote, "Please wear lipstick to the game, you look like a coach when you do," and that she tried to put it on in the car and cried it off before she got there. She told me she bought the doll from a resale site and told herself she was converting it into a family heirloom like you can baptize an object, and then hated herself for asking Emma to say it was from me. She said she didn't invite me to the wedding because she wanted a day where she wasn't the woman whose husband had cheated in the room with the woman who looked like him, and the second she typed that she knew it was a coward's calculus. I have been moving furniture around in my heart for years to make space for other people's kids and I forgot to leave a couch for you, she wrote. It wasn't perfect. It was not excuse-free. It was not an apology in the clean way people want. But it was the closest thing to her voice I've heard in years, the one that used to hum when she French braided my hair and told me my scalp was sensitive like it was a personality trait. I read it twice and then took a shower because I wanted to do something physical that wasn't crying. My roommate knocked on the door with a Target bag and a bath mat she bought because she said the tile was a hazard and I laughed until it sounded like I hadn't done that in a while. Yesterday, I walked to my grandma's with a bag of lemons because she likes to pretend the grocery store doesn't sell them and that the only real ones come hand-delivered from grandchildren. She was mending a tear in one of my grandpa's old sweaters like she was in a commercial for steadiness. I told her about the hospital and the poster board and the email and how every room I walk into lately has a different version of my life waiting in it like a pop-up book. She pulled a little cardboard box off the top of her pantry and gave it to me like we were trading secrets. Inside were photo booth strips of my mom at 19, tongue out, eyes wide, the exact face I make when someone says act natural and I forget how to be a person. On the back of one of them, in her spiky handwriting, it said, "Sometimes I think I'm going to be a terrible mother," and under it, my grandma had written, in blue pen, "Sometimes you will be and sometimes you won't. That's what being one is." On my way home, I stopped at a plant store that always smells like wet dirt and Better Choices and bought a pothos I named Absolutely Not because I wanted to make the joke to myself every time I water it. I put it on the shelf above my bed next to the ballet program and the little sweater and the sonogram photo I am not sure what to do with. I wrote back to my mom. Just a line. "I read this," I said. "I'm not ready to fix it with a phone call. You can email me like this if you want. No plans, no terms." She wrote back, "Okay." That was it. No timetable. No choreography. Just okay. And then, because the universe can hold 10 things at once, my old coach called to ask if I could help with a Saturday clinic for elementary school girls because 2 volunteers bailed and you know how to keep a scrimmage from turning into capture the flag. I said yes before I could talk myself into a cave. The gym smelled like rubber and popcorn and the kind of noise that fills your lungs. Emma showed up with her hair in 2 lopsided pigtails and her sneakers untied, like she'd slipped out of something to be there. My mom stood in the doorway with a coffee and watched me make a relay line out of chaos and didn't interrupt once. Afterward, one of the little kids pressed a sweaty sticker onto my arm like a medal and Emma took a picture of it and sent it to me with 2 blue hearts. Update 4. The plant over my bed put out a new leaf that looks like a folded boat and my phone buzzed with a text that said, "Heard it from the inside," which I stared at until a follow-up came. "Kick, do you want to feel a kick?" It was her. My dad's girlfriend. I almost wrote back not particularly and then the picture came through, her hand flat on her belly like she was listening through her palm. I went because apparently my body says yes while the rest of me is still writing emails about boundaries. In the car she kept the air too cold and the radio too low and told me the thing about fruit sizes like it was a riddle. "I'm supposed to say mango," she said. "Or turnip. I don't know, I don't want him to be produce." We sat on her couch later with our socks off like that would make us smaller and she moved my hand around like a divining rod. There was nothing and then under my fingertips a tap so faint I second-guessed it until it happened again, like someone knocking from the other side of a wall. I didn't cry this time. I laughed, this hiccup sound that surprised both of us. "That's him?" I asked, like we were in on a prank. She nodded and then blurted, too fast, "If it happens again, and your dad's not reachable, could I call you?" "Not to be anything. Just to not be alone. I sat there with my hand still on her belly and counted the exact tiles on her ceiling I could see, and then I said, "Okay. You can call me. I can leave if I need to." She said, "Deal," the way people do in movies when they shake on it, but we didn't. 3 days later, Emma sent a picture of 2 green construction paper triangles and wrote, "Science fair is volcanoes but also plants. Can you come?" She added, "Penny says yes" as a full sentence. I told her I'd be there and she asked if we could make the volcano bubble more than last year because Dad said last year was more like a swamp. I had a couch cushion piled with unpaid adulthood, mail that wasn't all mine and a towel I kept forgetting to hang and an invitation to a prenatal class with a cartoon lemon on it, and I went to the dollar store and bought more baking soda than felt legal. The school cafeteria still smelled like pizza from 28 years ago and the tables had that faint metal taste in the air I remember from being a kid who thought everything was a stage. I found her poster, Photosynthesis and Explosions, and put the extra vinegar under the table like contraband. My mom appeared at my shoulder like a weather pattern. She had on lipstick, my shade not hers, and her hair looked too carefully casual. She put a hand on Emma's back and then took it off like the space was hot. "Thank you for helping," she said, clipped, like a string tied tight. I kept my eyes on the baking soda volcano and said, "Sure." Her husband squeezed in with a plate of PTA cookies and I braced for him to be weird about me and instead he handed me a napkin and said, "Do we have a plan for overflow or do we accept chaos as a teaching tool?" I said chaos, absolutely, and we both grinned like we'd agreed to something important. When Emma did her demo, the vinegar went down too fast and the whole mountain tried to retire in a fizzy avalanche. Emma gasped, got that wobble lip look, and my mom did something I didn't expect. She laughed, not at her but with her, the kind of laugh that pops the balloon without letting it fly away. "Spectacular," she said, like a judge on a better show than we deserve. Emma steadied. She did her plant part and said chlorophyll with a little flourish and then drew an arrow to a cutting in a jar and wrote absolutely maybe on the index card because I brought her a piece from my pothos. She told a tiny man with a clipboard that she named it after mine and looked at me like this was normal, family, whatever that's supposed to look like under fluorescent lights. Penny found me by the soda machine with a face like someone who hadn't slept because she didn't know which thoughts to put down without them running away. "I don't want to fight," she said, and for once she meant it. We stood there under a poster about anti-bullying and she rubbed a crease into her sleeve. "I carried Mom on my back for a long time," she said to the tile floor. "I thought if I made you wrong I could make it make sense." She looked up at me with our father's eyebrows and our mother's stubborn mouth. "I was mean. I'm sorry." She didn't hug me because we both know how that would go in a cafeteria full of sugar and posters, but she stayed. We talked about nothing that matters because sometimes that's the only way to get to anything that does. She told me she keeps a toothbrush in her glove compartment now because she ends up at Mom's more than at home. I told her I have a plant named Absolutely Not. She laughed, this tiny bark, and said, "Of course you do." It rained sideways the night everything got thin. My roommate went to her boyfriend's at the exact moment our front door decided it didn't owe me entry. I stood in the hallway in a damp hoodie with groceries bruising my fingers and the kind of panic that feels dumb and huge at the same time, like crying because your sock is wet when what you're really feeling is your life. My landlord sent a thumbs up emoji that looked like a dare. I scrolled past Dad because I knew he'd come with a toolbox and a speech about deadbolts and past her because the one thing I promised myself was not letting her be the only emergency option in my phone, and then I did the brave stupid thing and typed an email subject line that said, "Am I near you?" and waited. She answered like I'd rung a bell in a kitchen she was already in. "Yes. 10 minutes. She arrived with a thermos and 2 cups and a little surveyor's flashlight like we were going camping in the hall. She didn't tell me to call my landlord earlier next time or that I should keep a spare with a neighbor who isn't 20 and addicted to composting. She poured me tea that tasted like mints in the inside of her purse and we sat on the mat I keep meaning to replace, backs against opposite walls, knees barely not touching. We listened to a woman upstairs yell at a reality show and a baby down the hall do that thready pre-cry in our own breathing. "I'm going to therapy," she said eventually, like she was reporting a weather change. "I don't know what to tell you about it yet. It makes me feel muscle sore. Good sore, maybe. Or just new." She looked at the door like if she concentrated hard enough it would apologize. "I keep thinking about your hair," she added, and my scalp actually prickled. "How I used to braid it too tight because I wanted it to look right for you and then you'd squirm and I'd get mad at you for not being still enough to be loved the way I was trying to love you." I didn't say anything because anything I said would have knocked the air out of that moment. We drank her tea and the locksmith showed up acting like the lock had betrayed him personally. She paid him, even though I told her I couldn't meant it, and she shrugged and said, "Let me fix one thing badly. It will make me feel better," which is the most honest she's been in a decade. When the door opened and my apartment breathed again, she didn't cross the threshold. She stood there and looked past me at my tiny life, the thrifted curtain, the lamp with the little sweater like a joke between me and myself, the plant going brave over the bed. "You really do have a nice place," she said, not like a haircut this time, but like a field you don't want to step on because it looks so green and small and perfectly yours. She left without asking for a plan. I sent her, later, a one-sentence thank you that felt like passing a note in class. She wrote back, "You're welcome, period," the safest punctuation in the world. The next week was made of small things that stuck. My dad came for dinner and cut his hamburger in half like a toddler and asked me about my syllabus with actual curiosity and, at the door, handed me a set of keys to a sedan older than me with a dent like a dimple and a license plate frame that says World's Best Mom. I laughed so hard I leaned against the hall. He said, "It came like that," and I said, "I'm keeping it, because the universe likes a joke too and sometimes I can take one." I named the car Mrs. Doubtfire on the way to the grocery store and she stalled once at a red light like she was working through her own feelings and then agreed to go. Emma came over after school with a yogurt that leaked into her backpack and we cleaned it in my sink like washing a cat and she asked if we could propagate. Absolutely not together because her jar on the science table used to fog up in a way that felt like a friend breathing. We put a cutting in water in a jelly jar and she named it Absolutely Maybe, and we didn't say why that felt right. My phone buzzed at 9 with a false alarm sorry from the person who asked to call me and I typed back I'm up, and meant it with zero resentment, which startled me. Penny texted me a picture of a diner menu with the caption pick something with syrup and no conversation topics that require tissues. We met in a booth that had carved initials from before either of us could drive and she put her phone face down with the kind of discipline you learn from being in charge too young. We ate pancakes that tasted like childhood and paper plates and decided we could do this again without any of it meaning everything. She told me she told Mom she was stepping back a little. I told her I was stepping forward a little. We did not toast to that because it would have been corny as hell and also perfect and I don't know who gets to call a moment like that what it is. I keep waiting for a rooftop confession or a letter that explains all the math I've been doing in my head since I was 13, but mostly it's been groceries and locks and little plants trying to root in water that gets cloudy unless you change it. My mom sent me 2 emails in a row without asking for anything. One with a recipe for lemon pasta I already know by heart and one with a picture of me in a too big uniform holding a trophy like a sandwich, captioned "You used to hate when I cried at games. I might still." I sent her a picture of the plant jar. She wrote back, "Of course you named it that," and I could hear her smile without seeing it. The last day of the clinic session, the girls made a line that refused to be a line and I blew my whistle in a way that made the gym laugh. Emma skidded to a stop next to me with her shoelace trailing like a comet and said, very seriously, "If you get me a real ref whistle I will not abuse it," and I believed her. When I looked up, my mom was in the doorway again, coffee balanced on the palm of her hand like a trick she was practicing, and she didn't wave or mouth anything or try to edit the moment. She just watched me doing something I'm good at and there was that same old look on her face from a program in a paper bag, proud and wrecked and trying. I can't do the fixing for her. I can't do the waiting in the old way. But I can pick up the pieces that are mine and set them where I want them. A car with a silly frame, a plant that says maybe, a door that opens, a list of phone numbers I can actually call when I need to. The rest is just us figuring out how to stand in the same gym without turning it into a courtroom. So far, nobody's keeping score. That feels like a win. Story 2. Mother-in-law dismisses my daughter's name and identity, and I'm about to make every family event a surreal game of name that baby. My husband, 32M, and I, 33F, welcomed our baby girl this past summer, after a long, exhausting road of infertility and finally, IVF. She's our first child, and believe me, the anticipation built over years as we debated and dreamed up baby names. The one we finally chose, our absolute favorite, has roots in the Nahuatl language, Aztec. While I'm Hispanic, I'm not Mexican, but my husband is, so this carried a lot of meaning for our family. Our daughter's first name is unique, but not the kind that would raise eyebrows or get her resume tossed in some future job hunt. Her middle name is also in Nahuatl, a bit more common but equally meaningful. We decided, from early on, she'd have my last name. After everything my husband and I endured, especially since I kept my maiden name when we married, he told me it was only right that she have my name. His father had been an abusive, awful man who passed away a few years ago, so my husband felt no connection to that side of his family and zero desire to carry on the surname. His mother remarried a long time ago and doesn't even use that last name herself. After such a struggle to get here, I grew superstitious. I refused to speak my baby's name before she arrived. We kept it entirely secret, not even a hint shared with family or friends until our daughter was safely in our arms. Her arrival was chaotic, 6 weeks early, thanks to preeclampsia, after 40 long hours of labor ending in an emergency C-section. When she finally made her entrance, our relief was indescribable. My husband messaged his mom to announce the birth, sent her a picture of our precious baby, and said, "Meet baby, first name middle name my last name." And her first response? Not a word of congratulations, not a single "she's beautiful" or simple "I'm so glad you and baby are safe." Nope. Instead, she said, "Oh, I would have named her, middle name feminized version of my husband's name husband's last name." That was all she had to offer at the birth of her granddaughter. Ever since then, she refuses to refer to my daughter by her actual first name. She uses only the middle name. We corrected her each time, every single time, but nothing changed. So my husband confronted her privately, asking, almost pleading, for his mom to please use our daughter's first name. She apologized and promised to try, but nothing. All her text messages still ask about baby, middle name, every single one. This continued through the holidays. When we visited for Christmas, I found every single gift tag addressed to my child using her middle name alone. I'm now at my wit's end. This has moved past confusing into outright infuriating. How do I get her to use the name we chose? My husband's confronted her directly. We both correct her every time she tries to rewrite our daughter's identity, one little refusal at a time. I don't want to keep my baby from her grandmother, otherwise, her mother-in-law is normal and kind. But seriously, what do I do? I have to admit, I'm tempted to start ignoring her texts altogether if she refuses to use my daughter's real name. At Christmas, when my husband's nephews handed out gifts, I made a very pointed show of saying, "Oh, are you sure these are for baby's name? They don't have her name on them." Maybe that's the beginning of my new strategy, making it awkward until she finally gives in. Wish me luck. Update 1. After everything that happened with my first post, I remain completely overwhelmed by the outpouring of support, validation, and genuinely helpful advice I received. I want to reiterate, I will not be sharing my daughter's name for obvious privacy reasons. Just take my word for it, it's not a tragedy. Her name really is only 2 easy syllables, simple to pronounce for anyone, anywhere. Now on to what's happened. This past weekend, we had a family get-together coming up. Beforehand, armed with some of the excellent suggestions I'd received, I sat down with my husband to decide how we'd tackle the ongoing name issue. He was just as frustrated as I was that my mother-in-law kept writing our baby's middle name on all her Christmas gifts, and he agreed, something needed to change. We decided that if and when my Mill used the wrong name again, he would take her aside and be direct. He'd ask why she kept refusing to call our daughter by her name, and he'd tell her plainly that it was hurtful and disrespectful. We wanted Mill to know that our daughter's relationship with her matters to us, but just as important is that our wishes as parents are respected. If Mill couldn't honor even this, she shouldn't expect to maintain a relationship with her granddaughter. That was the plan, anyway. But everything that happened that day threw our preparations completely off. Looking back, I should have expected that Mill would escalate her boundary pushing, but still, the degree she took it to left both me and my husband completely stunned. To give a little background, there's a family member on my husband's side that he grew up with always nearby, but this person was never kind, let alone friendly. My husband tried for years to maintain any semblance of a relationship, but they just brought toxicity and cruelty. Eventually they fell hard into alcohol and drugs, randomly exploding at my husband, screaming, getting violent, or harassing him out of nowhere with a flurry of texts and calls. Once my husband moved out on his own, these blow-ups were mostly limited to those phone outbursts, and their in-person contact dwindled to 3 or 4 times a year, which he could just barely tolerate. Then, a couple of years ago, things truly hit the fan. During a routine traffic stop, my husband found out he had several warrants out for his arrest, minor drug charges. He was completely blindsided. We quickly discovered the truth. This toxic family member had stolen my husband's identity and, during some previous arrest, had given out my husband's information but then skipped their court date. All the resulting legal paperwork was somehow sent to that person's address, not ours, even though our address was on the state records. The whole situation was an absolute nightmare, but luckily, I'm a lawyer. I helped by providing affidavits proving my husband's whereabouts, and I spoke directly with the prosecutor, who confirmed from arrest photos that my husband was not the suspect. The charges were dropped and, though it was an incredibly stressful ordeal, we managed to get through it. Afterward, I encouraged my husband to work with a therapist and process everything that had happened. I think he'd held back from cutting that person out because, somewhere deep down, he still hoped things might one day be different. But forgivable, this was not. With his therapist's encouragement, he finally wrote a long message to my Mill, telling her he was going no contact with this person and asking her, begging her, not to test this boundary again. To her credit, Mill had actually respected that boundary up until this weekend. We arrived at her house Saturday. She greeted us as usual, all smiles, cooing over the baby. "Can I hold the baby?" Of course, I said yes and handed her my daughter while my husband and I went to get ourselves settled. Almost immediately, I noticed Mill quietly slipping off into an adjoining room with my daughter. Then, suddenly, I overheard her say hi to Uncle _. My husband's reaction was instant. He bolted into the room and intercepted Mill, apparently just as she was trying to get my baby to reach out for this person's finger or something similar. He scooped our daughter up and brought her straight to me. I took one look at him, grabbed our things, and got our daughter buckled into her car seat as quickly as I could manage, shaking with shock and disbelief. Meanwhile, my husband gathered our stuff. He later told me all he could manage to say was, "Not fucking okay," before we were out the door. The drive home was completely silent. My husband was too shocked and angry for words. I let him have the space and time to process, letting the gravity of what just happened really sink in. The next day, once we'd had a chance to breathe and collect ourselves, we had a long heart-to-heart. The only possible next step was putting Mill on a timeout. I told my husband that, whereas before I'd thought Mill was just being rude and annoying with this ongoing name thing, now I believe she simply was not a safe person for our daughter to be around. If she could so grossly violate our boundaries, if she could think for even 1 second that it was all right to bring that toxic person around our baby, then clearly, her judgment was not to be trusted. My husband felt exactly the same. What stung the most for him was knowing that this person, who had never earned the right, had almost been allowed into our daughter's life solely because Mill was trying to heal an ancient rift that had nothing to do with us or, especially, our baby. He was furious, a family rift predating our daughter by decades now being forced onto her tiny shoulders. For the time being, Mill is out of our lives. I encouraged my husband to start therapy again. He is going to need it to decide what, if anything, a future relationship with Mill might look like. At the end of the day, both of us do genuinely want her to have a relationship with her granddaughter, but this was a bridge too far. We have to re-examine if the benefits truly outweigh the risks now, or ever. It breaks my heart for my husband. He wants his mom in his life, but he agrees, our daughter's safety comes first. Everything else is secondary. As devastated as I am for him, I'm also so proud that he continues to place our baby at the top of his priorities, keeping her far from the ugly family drama. Here's hoping, eventually, we find a safe, healthy way forward, but for now, we need space, and my daughter needs peace. For what it's worth, we did file a police report about the identity theft, but we never heard much back and my husband decided the less contact with that person, the better. He never followed up with the police department. And I never had a relationship with my paternal grandmother either, thanks to my parents. Looking back, I'm grateful, since I later learned she'd tried to do the same name stunt with my sister, always calling her a name she preferred rather than her real one. Some things never change. I only wish family boundaries could be as simple and black and white as choosing to walk away, but in the end, these things are messier. For now, my little family comes first. My husband has always been really close with his mother. Despite her many faults, she truly sacrificed a lot for him growing up. Until recently, I didn't have any personal problems with her. She had always treated me with respect and managed to avoid any drama. Everything changed when our daughter was born. Suddenly, issues began cropping up, and her behavior shifted in ways I never expected. These recent shenanigans have forced both my husband and me to reevaluate the whole relationship. We're now taking things extremely seriously. To be clear, we're both completely committed to not resuming contact or allowing her any access to our daughter until some very specific needs are addressed to our satisfaction. There's no wavering on this. At a bare minimum, we have agreed that she will never be allowed unsupervised access to our daughter again. I am absolutely resolute about this. She can never be left alone with our child. We're treating this situation like a mandatory timeout, because I know for certain that if we don't, this toxicity will never end and the drama will just keep escalating. Update 2. 3 days after we went no contact, I was at work when my phone lit up with the daycare's number. The director's voice was calm in that deliberate way that means it isn't actually calm at all. She said, "There's a woman here who says she's the baby's grandmother. She's asking for baby, middle name, husband's last name. We don't have a child by that name. She says you must have registered her wrong." I was out the door before it even hung up. When I got there, Mill was at the front desk with a gift bag, white with gold script, the wrong name embroidered on a tiny blanket draped over the edge like a flag. She had on this bright, breezy smile that didn't reach her eyes. I have never been so grateful for policy in my life. The front desk had already refused her, and they had our no release to anyone but list up on the screen. Mill kept saying she just wanted to peek in at the baby. I told her we were leaving, that she needed to go. She tried, "I'm just trying to fix things," and then she said my daughter's middle name again like it was some kind of talisman that would get her past the glass. The director asked if I wanted them to call security. I said yes. Mill started to cry. I don't think I've ever seen my husband's mother cry in front of me. It was not a sobbing, keening cry, it was one precise tear down the cheek as she lifted the blanket and said, "This is her real name," very soft. I picked up the blanket, handed the bag back, and told her that if she said those words again at this daycare, the next time it would be the police, not security. We left with the baby. The director walked us to the car and, on the way, handed me a form to add a password to pickups. I signed it in the parking lot while my daughter cooed at her own foot. The password is her first name. That night, a thick manila envelope arrived by courier from a fancy downtown firm. Mill had hired an attorney. The letter was performative and grand. It accused us of unreasonably restricting access and alienating a grandparent. It cited our daughter by the middle name and the wrong last name throughout, like they could will it into being by sheer repetition. They attached photographs, the Christmas gifts, the little monogrammed blanket, a card addressed with the wrong name and elaborate calligraphy. There was even a character letter attached in support of Mill's role in the child's life. I swear I am not making this up. It was from the same family member who stole my husband's identity. They wrote that our daughter, again, using the wrong name, needs her uncle, that family is family, and that we were keeping, middle name, from her roots. The letterhead? A halfway house. I am a lawyer, yes, but this is not my area. Still, reading that packet, something cold and precise clicked into place in my head. I drafted a response that night and had a colleague in the right practice area review it in the morning. We sent back a very polite version of no. We told them we are fit parents, we told them our daughter's legal name, we told them to stop using the wrong one. We told them no to any visitation, supervised or otherwise, and no to any contact while the timeout is in effect. We put them on notice that Mill is not permitted at daycare, our home, or my husband's workplace, and that any further attempt to remove, visit, or otherwise approach our child without our written consent would be treated as trespass and reported. We included, for good measure, a copy of the previous police report about the identity theft and a fresh report number for the daycare incident. We included the daycare's written statement that she attempted to obtain access to baby, middle name, husband's last name, a child who does not exist. The response back from the firm, 2 days later, was almost funny if it weren't our lives. They regretted any confusion and said Mill was very distressed and not in her right mind when she stopped by the daycare, that she only wanted to reconcile. They asked us to propose reasonable conditions for reunification. They used my daughter's first name once, wrongly spelled, and slid right back into the middle name on the next line. It read like someone had tried to find and replace and lost steam halfway through. Meanwhile, because life doesn't pause to let you manage one disaster at a time, we woke up to an alert from a credit monitoring service. Someone had attempted to open a store card in my husband's name at a big box chain 2 towns over. The application address was Mill Street. We've had freezes on our credit since the last identity mess, so it didn't go through, but seeing her street on that alert felt like getting punched in slow motion. Was it her? Was it the other person? Both? We don't know. We drove to the police station, handed over the alert, and made another report, this time right away. We gave them the name of the halfway house from the character letter, and I watched the officer's face move from bored to attentive. He took it seriously. He told us to expect a call from a detective. We spent the evening calling every place our daughter could ever set foot, daycare, pediatrician, even the hospital where she was born, updating release forms, adding passwords, handing over pictures, explaining that no one was to receive any information or access without us. The pediatrician's office manager, bless her, didn't blink. Happens more than you'd think, she said, and made 3 separate notes on our file. The attorney's letter had asked us to propose conditions. We spent a whole night talking it through with my husband's therapist on speakerphone. I don't want to turn our child into a court order, but I also refuse to choose wishful thinking over safety. The next morning, we sent a single-page proposal through the attorney. It said, in essence, if Mill wants any contact with our daughter, she must do 3 things. 1. Attend family therapy with my husband and a provider we select. 2. Sign a written acknowledgement of our daughter's legal name, first, middle, and last, and commit to use it. 3. Provide, through her counsel, proof that she has had no contact of any kind with the person who stole my husband's identity for at least 6 months. Until those conditions are met, there will be no contact, and even then, only through supervised visits at a neutral site. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a video of Mill, obviously recorded on her phone, sitting in her kitchen. She looked exhausted and older than last week. She said my daughter's first name, correctly, then paused, then said it again. She said the middle name, then my last name. Then she said, I love you, first name, and ruined the entire thing by adding, but you'll always be my middle name, in the next breath. I blocked the number and forwarded the clip to her attorney with a short message. All communication goes through counsel. Please advise your client not to circumvent that. The next day, my husband received an email from the attorney instead of a letter. They'd withdrawn from representing her. Irreconcilable differences, the email said. I would have laughed if I wasn't so tired. Then, because apparently we're living in a cautionary tale, the church office called. We're very Christmas and Easter, and we hadn't made any baptism plans yet. The receptionist asked if we were confirming the baptism for Sunday. My stomach dropped. I asked what name was on the certificate. She said, cheerfully, middle name, feminized version of my husband's name, husband's last name, and described a linen gown grandmother had dropped off. I told her there was no baptism, that I would be emailing her the birth certificate, and that under no circumstances were we to be put on any schedule or allowed any sacrament arranged by anyone but us. She apologized and said they'd remove it. I asked what time Mill had dropped off the gown. It was the same afternoon as the daycare. We kept the appointment with the detective. He had already pulled footage from our daycare's external cameras. Mill is there, clear as day, carrying that gift bag. There is a car idling at the curb behind her with someone in the passenger seat whose face is obscured by a hoodie. It might be nothing, a rideshare, a neighbor, but it felt like watching a ghost sit up. The detective told us he would follow up with the halfway house. I wish I could say there's a neat resolution after all of this, but the truth is we're in the in-between, practical steps, lines drawn in ink instead of pencil. We filed for a temporary restraining order preventing Mill from coming within a certain distance of our home, daycare, my office, and the pediatricians. The judge signed it the same day with the hearing date 2 weeks out. We installed a doorbell camera even though we live in a building with a buzzin'. We told our neighbors to direct any grandmotherly inquiries to the front desk. My husband started therapy again. He came home from his first session quiet and raw, and then he took our daughter into her room and said her first name over and over while he changed her diaper, like he was stitching it into the air. I put the monogrammed blanket in a sealed box with a note to myself, do not open unless and until it won't feel like a wound. I don't know when that will be. Maybe never. Maybe one day we'll look at it and shake our heads and tell our daughter a story about a family that had to learn that love is an action, not a label. For now, we say her name out loud at every turn. We say it at the pediatrician, to the daycare director, to the detective, to each other, like a lighthouse we can see even in the fog. We're doing the boring, steady work that never makes it into the movies, saving emails, printing screenshots, filing reports, making passwords. It feels unromantic and deeply adult, and I hate that this is what her first year looks like on the margins. But the center is still ours. Baths, sleepy smiles, the soft hiss of the white noise machine, the way her little hands unfurl when she's dreaming. She has a name, and it belongs to her. The rest of us don't get to rename what we don't own. Update 3. The hearing was on a Tuesday morning at the courthouse with the bad vending machines and the good fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look one shade paler. I wore my most boring suit. My husband didn't bring the baby. A friend from my office sat with her in the lobby between strolls around the block. We had a binder. The binder had tabs. I didn't sleep the night before, but the tabs made me feel like I could. Mill came in late, clutching a rosary and a manila envelope that had been bent so many times the flap was soft. No attorney. Her lipstick was too red. I watched her scan the room until she landed on us. The look she gave my husband was something like pleading weaponized into a glare. Our case was called. The judge was the kind you remember from jury duty, the tight bun, the measured voice, the way she waited 2 beats after each objection like she was timing a metronome. She asked me to state my name. She asked my husband to state his. She asked for our daughter's name and I said it, first middle last, and felt the words plant their feet on the carpet. When it was Mill's turn, she cleared her throat and tried, I'm here about my granddaughter, middle name. The judge stopped her with a hand. We will use the child's legal name in this courtroom, she said, without looking at anyone but the file. It was such a small sentence and I could have kissed the bench. Mill started to cry when she spoke, one of those tight-chested, airless cries that makes your shoulders lift. She said she was scared of being cut off, said she was trying to fix a misunderstanding, said she was sorry for the daycare but that she just wanted to peek, and then she reached into the envelope and pulled out the tiny monogrammed blanket like it could be an exhibit. The bailiff's voice came from somewhere behind me, no props. Mill flinched and set it on the table. The judge's face didn't move at all. When it was our turn, we didn't perform. We handed up the daycare statement, the letter from the lawyer, the withdrawal, the credit alert, the notice to the church, the video timestamp from our doorbell camera from the day she tried our building buzzer twice and then called my husband 11 times in a row. It was just paper, stacked and level. Mill said the wrong last name 2 more times. Each time, the judge corrected her like it was a spelling bee. At the end, the judge granted the order. 1 year, stay away from home, daycare, my office, my husband's office, pediatrician. No third-party contact. No social media posts of the child's image or full name. No contact through the church or any school. The judge looked at Mill and said, in that precise steady voice, that this was not punishment, it was protection. Names have meaning, she added, and then she moved on to the next case, and just like that our emergency became a docket number that unfurled into ink. 2 days later, the detective called. They'd picked up the other person for a probation violation. During the interview, he admitted to the card application at the big box store and 2 others we hadn't seen because of our freezes. He called Mill auntie, but couldn't keep his own story straight about addresses. He said he crashed there sometimes and then said he never went there in the space of 4 sentences. The detective didn't promise anything. He said the DA might tack on identity theft-related charges, that Mill's name could come up as a witness, that we should keep documenting. He used the words we've all started using around this. Maybe she's complicit, maybe she's careless, maybe it's both. The facts are the facts, the rest is speculation. Then came the knock. Not a battering ram knock, but the measured 1 2 3 of someone who has practiced not startling people. A CPS worker at our door, badge on a lanyard, clipboard against her hip. Anonymous report, the baby was left at daycare all day and never held, the baby wasn't developing, the baby was being called the wrong name and confused. It almost would have been funny if it didn't make my husband's hands shake when he took the pen to sign the consent for entry. We let her in. She looked around the apartment, which was 2/3 baby gear and 1/3 laundry. She saw the bookshelf with the board books lined like tiny teeth. She saw the bottles drying by the sink and the stack of pediatric growth charts on the fridge with the documenting scribbles I make in the margins because it makes me feel like I can store time. She asked to see the baby's room. My husband picked our daughter up from her playmat. Our daughter grabbed the CPS worker's lanyard and made a delighted noise like a bicycle horn. The worker smiled. She sat on the floor for 10 minutes and asked us questions about feeding and sleep and who watched the baby when we were at work and whether anyone in the home used substances. She asked to see the baby's crib, and she checked with 2 fingers to make sure it was fixed and not a drop side. She asked for the pediatrician's name, and I handed her a printout from the last well visit and the schedule for the next one. She asked if anyone had tried to baptize the baby without our consent. I said yes and gave her the name of the church. She wrote it down. At the end, she stood and said, "I'm closing this out as unfounded." I said, "Thank you," and then I went into the bathroom and cried until my face pressed a little crescent into the towel. My husband's therapist gave him homework. He has to write a letter to his mother that he will not send yet, a letter with the boundaries spelled out in words so plain you can't pretend you misheard them. He spent an evening at the kitchen table, hands around a mug of tea that went cold, and then he wrote it. He used our daughter's name 7 times. He did not mention the blanket at all. The church called again, a different staffer. He wanted to apologize, personally. He said a grandmother had tried a neighboring parish with a different day and they flagged it because our file was now marked. He said they were updating their policy about scheduling sacraments for minors to require parental signatures in person, with identification, always. He sounded tired in the way people sound when they've just realized how many little cracks there are for big things to slip through. Mill found a way to wave from the edges anyway. A bouquet came to my husband's office with a card addressed to my middle name S. Daddy. It was a violation, and small, and also not small. We logged it. We sent it to the detective and to the court clerk. The clerk called back and told us how to file a declaration. The detective called back and said, "Thank you." The flowers went into the break room with a note that said "Free, please take." They were gone in 15 minutes. There was one more call from an unexpected corner, the halfway house administrator. The detective had spoken to him. He was calling to let us know that the other person had been moved to a different facility. He said Mill had been banned from the premises after an incident in the parking lot. She had tried to hand over a bag through the window to someone not permitted to receive outside items. He didn't say what was in the bag. He apologized for the drama our family had been pulled into. The phrase "pulled into" sat in my chest like a coin you swallow by accident. I wish this ended with a neat bow and we did the right thing and now it's done, but it's not done. The day after the flowers, a handwritten letter arrived in our mailbox with no return address. Mill had written our daughter's full name correctly at the top. The first paragraph was an apology so perfect it read like a template. The second paragraph pivoted. "In our family," she wrote, "we name to honor." She wrote that saying the middle name felt like touching her own mother's hand, that the last name felt like erasing a line that had been drawn in blood. She wrote that she would go to therapy if we picked the person. She wrote that she was willing to do whatever, and then put in parentheses, including using the legal name, as if it were a concession she was negotiating, not a reality. At the bottom, she added a little prayer card taped with scotch tape, and on the back of the card she had written, in tiny letters, the wrong name again. It felt less like defiance than a tick she couldn't stop. We didn't respond. We sent a PDF of the letter to the court email and saved the original in the binder. We expanded the TRO to include our mailbox. The judge granted it on the paperwork without a hearing. The clerk called me and said, "You're not the first to ask." There have been quiet minutes too. Our daughter rolled from tummy to back for the first time on a thin gray rug that shows every crumb. She did it like she'd been doing it forever, like we were late to notice. My husband whooped so loud the upstairs neighbor stomped on the floor and then texted us to ask if everything was okay. We sent a grainy video in reply and he sent back 6 exclamation points. We sang our daughter's name to her the way people sing lullabies. She laughed one of those hiccuping baby laughs that start in the chest and end with surprise on their own faces. I don't know what will happen with Mill. I know the next year will either be quiet in the way good years are, routine, boring, hours, or it won't, and will use the tools the world gives you when you need to draw bright lines. I know the detective will call or he won't. I know the church will remember, and the daycare will buzz only for the people on the list, and the pediatrician will ask the password and we will say it like a benediction. A judge put her name in an order, a clerk typed it into a database, a cop wrote it in a report. But the best part was this: yesterday, after bath, wrapped in a hooded towel with ridiculous bare ears, our daughter babbled the first syllable of her name. Not a word yet, not quite, but something close enough that both of us went still. We said her name back to her and she turned her head, swift and sure, like she knew exactly who she is. That's the only record that matters. Update 4. The first text came at 6:12 a.m., a screenshot from a friend who reads the legal notices like the comics. "Is this your Mill?" he wrote, and then the grainy black and white column, petition of, Mill's full name, to change her name to, our daughter's exact first middle last. I watched the steam walk off my coffee until it was just a cold dark circle and then I was already pulling the docket from my laptop with the weird calm that descends when the world refuses to be real. I don't think I blinked until the objection was filed. Fraudulent purpose. Likely confusion with a minor. Existing protective order. Identity theft history in the family orbit. I asked the court to seal our daughter's name in that matter and to require Mill to show cause why it wasn't a misuse of the process. My husband stood at the sink, his hands on the edge like he was bracing, and said our daughter's name once, the way you say your own in a mirror to prove you exist. The hearing was fast because emergency calendars always are. Different judge, same clipped patience. Mill was there in a blouse with tiny embroidered flowers and a printed statement with the kind of centered title you find on chain email apologies. She said she was seeking a spiritual alignment, that names in our family carried blood memory, that changing hers to match the baby's true name would be healing. She used the wrong last name and my husband's face didn't move but his foot tapped once under the table, a small tell I felt like a thread in my own sleeve. The judge asked her 2 questions in a voice like a ruler laid flat. Are you under a current protective order prohibiting contact with this child? Yes. Has a close relative of the child attempted to use the father's identity within the last 3 years? She hesitated like a dropped beat and said, that has nothing to do with. The judge held up a palm. It had everything to do with it. I handed up the TRO and the police reports and the notice from the DA about victim rights, the kind they print on cream paper and send certified. The judge read for longer than I breathed and then she said, "Petition denied. No refile for 12 months without leave of court. The minor's name is sealed in this matter." It was over in a gavel-less way, a pen stroke, but my husband's shoulders dropped like someone finally told his body there was a chair. On the way out, Mill tried to hand me another manila envelope. The bailiff had moved before I had. "Ma'am," he said, barely more than air. She set it on a bench like a tiny memorial and walked away. Inside, later, there was a stack of half-completed church forms with the wrong name and a photocopy of a photograph, the monogrammed blanket draped over a pew as if fabric could bless itself. I slid it into the binder behind a tab I labeled Other. The detective called that afternoon with the careful tone people use when they know your day has already been stolen once. The bag she'd tried to pass through the halfway house window? Prepaid card scratched bare, a little notebook with 3 addresses, hers, ours, my husband's old off-campus apartment from a decade ago, and a post-it with my husband's social cut in half, the last 4 numbers replaced with question marks like a quiz. He didn't say what he thought, he told me what he knew. The cousin pled to the new charges. Mill's name sits in the report in the spaces labeled contact, present, provided. The DA hasn't decided yet if that means anything more. He told us they'd keep us in the loop. He told us, again, to keep documenting. It was both comfort and assignment. 2 days later, the pediatrician's office called to confirm our insurance for an upcoming well visit. The office manager's voice went warm and then a little crisp. "We had a call yesterday asking for immunization records for baby, middle name, husband's last name," she said, reading exactly the wrong combination with exactly right pronunciation. They asked for the password and then hung up. We changed the password again anyway, because defense is repetition when you're tired. Mill did find a new corner to wave from. A profile with no picture and 3 friends appeared in the neighborhood Facebook group with a post that read like a birth announcement. "For a baby that doesn't exist, welcome to the world, middle name, feminized version of my husband's name, husband's last name." No photos, just cursive emojis and a tone like a benediction. It was small and also not small. It took me 3 minutes to pull the order and type the sentence that matters. "Any use of our child's image or name for contact or publication violates paragraph 7. We filed the contempt declaration with the screenshot and the URL. The clerk called us the next morning. The judge would hear it on the papers. Later that week, an order arrived by email, finding a violation, admonishment, a suspended fine that will become very real if she does it again. Further violation will result in incarceration. It read in dense sentences that felt like steel cable. There were quieter things threaded through the loud ones. Our daughter said her name and then, the next day, said it again with her own private vowel at the end, a little flourish that made it sound like a song. Daycare hung a piece of paper on the hall corkboard with her name in thick kindergarten teacher letters above 2 handprints the color of grass right after rain. My husband stood in front of that corkboard for so long another parent squeezed past him and said cute in that tired way that means all babies are miracles and all of us are late for something. We pinned the handprints to our fridge with a magnet shaped like a pineapple that came in the mail, from an insurance company we will never use. We finally did the thing we'd been meaning to do since the hospital bracelet came off. We took her to get passport photos. There is nothing in this world more absurd than standing in a fluorescent room trying to coax a 4-month-old to look at a camera and not smile. The clerk said neutral face and our daughter gave him the most unhinged grin I've ever seen. The 5th try was a perfect blank stare, her eyes so dark and round they looked like punctuation. We enrolled in the State Department's alert program in the parking lot while she kicked at the edge of her car seat and tried to eat her own sock. It felt like locking a deadbolt none of our neighbors can see. Then, because this has become our pattern, court, cop, church, quiet, the church reached out to us first. The pastor himself this time. He had read the flag on our file and wanted us to know they'd updated their sacrament scheduling rules across the parish cluster. In-person ID only, both parents present, name verified against a civil document. He said it was unfortunate it took a mess to fix a crack. He used our daughter's first name the way you use the right key without jiggling it, smooth and sure. I surprised myself by saying, thank you and meaning it. Mill's name change denial didn't stop her from trying to slip through side doors. The process server came on a windy afternoon with a pro se petition for grandparent time, typed without margins and filed pro forma. It cited a statute that doesn't apply to intact families. It used the wrong name throughout. The hearing lasted as long as it takes to say statutorily insufficient. The judge looked at Mill and reminded her, again, there was an order. On the way out, my husband's jaw was set so tight I could see the muscle jump. In the elevator, he stared at the little glow of the floor numbers like they could tell the future. I don't want to hate my mother, he said into the metal space where our reflections all looked like we were underwater. You don't, I said, because it was true. He hates this. There is a difference. At home, we added a new tab to the binder because there is always a new tab. We wrote our daughter's name on it in thick marker and then we put the pen away. We ate dinner standing up because sitting down felt like a dare. The baby smeared avocado across her high chair tray and then into her hair, and then she looked at us like she had invented green. We bathed her and wrapped her in the barrier towel and said her name again, First, middle, last, a full sentence we never get tired of saying. I tell myself that at some point soon the strangest thing in our life will be the way she sleeps with one fist open and the other closed, like she's bargaining with the night. I tell myself we are already there, mostly. The detective will call or he won't. The mail will bring a thin envelope or it will bring nothing at all. The order sits there like a fence that's taller when you stand next to it. We keep the doors locked that need locking. We keep the windows open that can be. We keep saying her name out loud, and if there's an incantation in any of this, that's the one that works. Story 3. Uninvited. My dad's wife from my daughter's birthday after her surprise Cinderella act caused chaos last year, fearing a repeat performance. For context, my dad has been with Kathy for a little under 15 years. She's technically his third wife, and ever since she became a part of our lives, her presence has come with a fair share of drama. There's always been this underlying insecurity about her place in our family, constantly needing reassurance, sometimes in ways that leave everyone else exhausted. The neediness, the theatrics. It's almost like she survives on bursts of attention. My daughter's 6th birthday is fast approaching in February, and my husband and I have started planning her party. Last year, we threw this magical Cinderella-themed party at our home. My dad arrived solo, telling me Kathy was staying homesick. At the time, I brushed it off, but there was a weird feeling I just couldn't shake. Near the end of the party, Kathy made her grand entrance, dressed to the nines in a Cinderella costume, acting completely in character, fluttering around the room trying to entertain the kids. Neither my husband nor I had any idea she was planning to do this. The only thing she had mentioned weeks prior was a casual, "Are you going to hire any party performers?" It was only later I discovered she'd bought the costume as soon as she found out the party theme and decided to surprise my daughter. No heads up, no coordination with us. Looking back, it was painfully obvious the whole performance was for attention. My daughter recognized Kathy the second she walked in, so the magic was pretty much lost for her and most of the kids. Instead of delight, it caused confusion. Her dramatic arrival coincided with cake time, and some parents were trying to gather their kids and say their goodbyes. There I was, suddenly juggling a dozen bewildered preschoolers. Things eventually calmed down, and my daughter still had a wonderful birthday, but my husband and I made it clear to Kathy that we never wanted a repeat performance. She apologized and promised not to do it again. Or so I thought. I can't shake the sinking suspicion she's gearing up for another encore. Over the holidays, whenever we spent time with my dad's side of the family, Kathy somehow kept steering conversations back to the whole Cinderella episode, laughing about the entrance, showing off photos, going on about what she'd change if she did it again. She kept questioning my daughter about this year's theme, even asking how she'd feel if a character made a surprise appearance at her party. The whole ordeal felt like foreshadowing, and the last thing I want is to relive last year's chaos, especially since we're having this year's party at a venue with a strict time slot. My husband and I sat Kathy down, explained our concerns, and asked her directly not to pull another surprise. She didn't deny planning something, but instead kept pushing how much the kids would love it, insisting it would be harmless fun. We pressed her to promise she wouldn't do it, but she just dodged the request, acting as if she couldn't understand why there was even a problem. Finally, frustrated, we told her it would be better if she sat out the party itself and joined us only at dinner afterward. Now Kathy is upset, and my dad is fuming, accusing us of being paranoid and over the top. I keep questioning if maybe I'm taking things too far, but with everything I've seen and heard, I'm almost certain she's plotting another attention grab. I can't risk chaos at my daughter's party, not with so many kids, tight timelines, and the memory of last year's confusion hanging over us. The whole problem isn't that she wants to dress up. It's bigger than that. It's the fact that she won't warn us or let us prepare. Last year, one little girl left the party in tears because her parents had to leave right after Cinderella arrived. I'm responsible for this event. I need to know what's happening so I can actually manage the party. Kathy isn't the worst boundary crosser in my family, but she has a habit of doing what she thinks people should want, rather than what they actually ask for. My kids like her, but like is the right word, they don't adore her, and last year's performance didn't help. She's the type to ignore the offers to help set up party favors or write invitations. None of the behind-the-scenes work interests her. She only wants the spotlight. We've made our boundaries crystal clear, time and again, but Kathy dodges every attempt to get a straight answer. Instead, she repeats how sure she is that the kids would love her act. She refuses to acknowledge how complicated this makes things for us as parents. My fear is that she'll show up unannounced in a costume again, throwing off all our planning and possibly upsetting the kids, again. There's also the matter of her insecurities. Kathy entered the picture when my dad's kids were already adults, and by then, the family couldn't have been less interested in analyzing another of his relationships. It's like she's desperate to assert her place, and the only way she knows how is by making herself the center of attention, allergic to not having eyes and ears on her, as my husband perfectly puts it. Raising kids has only made this side of her worse. So that's where I'm at, caught between not wanting to exclude someone from a family event, but even more determined not to let anyone hijack my daughter's party. Update 1. I have this love/hate relationship with always being right, and sometimes I really wish I weren't. 2 days after everything happened, my dad called me. He told me, half sheepishly, half amused, that there's this purple wig at his place. Not just any wig, either. It's styled in a way that looks suspiciously similar to Rumi from K-pop Demon Hunters. He admitted he opened Kathy's mail by accident, assuming it was his, and that's when he found it. The actual costume isn't even there yet, it's set to arrive in about a week. Apparently, Kathy had no plans to tell him about either one. He tried to play it off, of course, claimed they fought about it, since neither the costume nor the wig were cheap. But then he couldn't help himself, he started waxing poetic about how Kathy's been watching the movie repeatedly to study, and isn't it just so sweet how much she loves my kids? Isn't it sweet that maybe, just maybe, my daughter would like it this time? That was the point where I had to leave the call and hunt for a pillow so I could scream into it without traumatizing anyone. I am so completely done, way angrier than I should be. But honestly, this isn't the first time a member of my family has decided my plans and effort mean absolutely nothing. If I can't even orchestrate my own child's birthday without someone swooping in to claim center stage, then I certainly don't have to feel bad about finally drawing a hard line. So, Kathy is out. Officially banned from the party. My husband and I wasted no time. We called the venue, explained that we didn't hire any character performers, and if a suspiciously Caucasian-looking Korean pop star in a purple wig shows up, they are to send her right back home. We even gave them a photo of Kathy, just to be sure. The venue assured us that no one not on the guest list is allowed inside anyway, so I felt a little lighter about that. One less thing to stress over. Honestly, I hate that I had to drag a third party into my family drama, but at least I have one fewer anxiety trigger to juggle. Of course, my dad and I fought about it. He kept saying it wouldn't be a big deal if I would just let Kathy have this. I put my foot down. It's not the point, I argued. He's not the one who would have to handle the aftermath with a bunch of confused, upset kids. He doesn't get to downplay how hard it would be. We did, eventually, hammer out an agreement. Dad can come to the party, so long as Kathy is nowhere in sight. If she shows up with him, they both leave. I don't care. Later, both could still join us for dinner, but the party is off limits to Kathy, in all her would-be pop star glory. I'm now seriously considering lowering my contact with them both. I love my dad, I truly do, but some headaches just aren't worth it. I'll wait until I'm calmer before deciding exactly what kind of boundaries to put in place. Through all this, I feel thankful for everyone who listened. Life's been a bit much lately, and with my therapist on vacation, I really needed to vent. Now, though, it's time to focus on relaxing for a while. Knowing this is over, I already feel lighter. And in case you're wondering, this kind of thing happens a lot, even when my dad disagrees with Kathy. But this? Not the same as the usual. If she just showed up at a party full of small kids out of nowhere, history could so easily repeat itself. If she prances into a family-only dinner at a restaurant in costume, then at worst she gets to embarrass herself. No children confused, no birthday ruined. But if you let these oversteps slide, they only get bolder next time. Not anymore. Not on my watch. Update 2. The party happened today. It was as close to perfect as a room full of 6-year-olds and industrial quantities of frosting can be. The venue did what venues do best: loud music, a staff member in a glittery blazer who can coordinate children like an air traffic controller, cupcakes handed out with the efficiency of a military operation. My dad showed up on time, alone, with a gift he said Kathy picked out, sparkly headphones, and a face that wouldn't make direct eye contact with mine. I remember thinking, maybe, just maybe, we overprepared. At the 45-minute mark, the manager tapped my shoulder and asked me, very gently, if we were expecting a delivery. I said no. She glanced at the front windows. I turned and saw purple. Not inside. Outside, just beyond the property line, was a folding vinyl banner that read Pop Star Party. In glittery letters. Bubble machine chugging. Ring light on a tripod. Portable speaker blasting a sanitized K-pop playlist at medium volume, like someone trying not to disturb the neighbors while still disturbing the neighbors. And in the center of it all, a suspiciously Caucasian-looking Rumi, purple wig and all, striking poses to nobody in particular. Kathy had found the one square of sidewalk they couldn't control and built herself a stage on it. I felt the way you do when your stomach drops on a roller coaster, except without any of the fun. The kids spotted her almost immediately, faces glued to the glass, tiny hands smudging the windows. A few squealed. A few looked confused. One child announced to everyone, "That's not the real one. My mom said the real one lives in Korea," which would have been hilarious if my blood pressure weren't currently auditioning for space. My dad went pale and then pink and then tried to melt into the play structure. He took out his phone and said, "I told her not to do this," while clearly texting her. The manager moved fast. She brought down the blinds on the lower half of the windows and told her staff to keep the kids focused on the activity stations. My husband went to the door. I followed. We stepped outside into a bubble fog and feedback squeal. Kathy saw us and lit up like a stage light. "I'm not coming in," she chirped, as if this were the respectful compromise of the century. "I'm just here to give a little show when they're leaving. 10 minutes, tops." "You're not giving anything," I said. "We told you. You're not doing this." "It's harmless," she said, doing a spin that sent the wig sliding a centimeter. "Look, I have choreography. I watched the movie 3 times last night. I just want to make them smile. Across the sidewalk, a guy I'd never seen before put down a camera bag and started assembling a lens. Kathy glanced at him and waved. "Oh, that's Jacob. He's doing candids." I stared at her. She smiled like we were partners in a surprise proposal. "You hired a photographer to take pictures of random children," I said. It came out flatter and calmer than I felt. My husband stepped between the camera and the door and told the man, "No pictures of kids. Pack it up." He looked at Kathy. "I wasn't told that," he muttered, but he put the camera back in the bag. Kathy stamped one heeled sneaker and whispered, "You're ruining this." Parents started lining up inside to collect their kids. Some had already clocked the purple wig circus outside. One dad mouthed to me through the glass, "Do we have to go through that?" The manager shook her head and redirected the exit to the side door. Kathy saw this and did a little hop of indignation. "I'm literally not on your property," she called, like she'd learned a new legal phrase and wanted to try it out. Then my dad joined us outside. He wouldn't look at me. He addressed a point somewhere near my shoulder. "She's already here. Let her do one song. Then she'll go. Or, you could both go," I said. The part of me that usually tries to de-escalate had clocked out. Kathy switched tactics. She softened, eyebrows tilting up under the wig. "Sweetie," she said to me, and I nearly laughed because no. Think about how much she's going to remember this. I brought goodie bracelets. She held up a bunch of plastic bangles in colors that, yes, matched the theme. "I put them together myself," she added, as if that detail could rewrite history. What I didn't know until later, earlier in the week, she'd messaged a few of the moms from last year, people she'd added on Facebook after the Cinderella incident, and told them there would be a bonus surprise outside after the party. So while we were negotiating on the sidewalk, I watched two families peel off and head toward her, kids' eyes round as saucers. That made my choice simple. "We are not doing competing exits for my kids' party," I said. "You're done. If you don't leave, I will involve security or the police. Pick." The manager had already called their security guy, who came out, young and polite and very much not paid enough for this. He explained calmly that if she kept filming children without parent consent on their premises, they'd have to trespass her. She took 2 theatrical steps backward onto what she believed was safety. "Public sidewalk," she sang, doing another spin. Behind me, a tiny voice said, "Mom?" My daughter had walked over with my husband's mom, who, bless her, runs toward mess rather than away from it. She pressed into my side and looked out at Kathy like she was a storefront display. "Is that Kathy?" she whispered. "It is," I said. "And it's okay to wave. We're going back inside to open presents." She thought about it. She lifted her hand and gave the limpest little wave I've ever seen. Kathy beamed. "Happy birthday, pop star," she chirped. My daughter looked up at me and then at the cupcakes on the table and decided, like a tiny general making a strategic retreat, "I want to go open my gifts." Then she took my hand and tugged me back inside. It should have ended there. It didn't. As the party wrapped up, parents had to navigate around the spectacle. 2 kids burst into tears because their parents wouldn't let them stop for a sidewalk concert. One mom told Kathy she was inappropriate and then told the Jacob guy she'd call the police if she saw him take one more picture of any child. He left. Kathy, faced with shrinking audience and a sinking sun, turned the music down and went for pathos. "Maybe next year." She trilled to a kid who had no idea who she was supposed to be. When it was finally over and the last cupcake wrapper had been scraped off the floor, I canceled dinner. I texted my dad 3 words, "Dinner is off." He texted back, "Overreacting." 10 minutes later, Kathy posted a filtered photo in full purple wig with a caption about being silenced by jealousy that my sister sent me because she knows better than to assume I'm still on social media. My dad called. Voice low, "She wasn't on the property," he said. "You made a scene." I told him my 6-year-old did not make a scene. She made a choice to stay at her party, with her friends, without being dragged through a pop-up meet and greet run by a grown woman who can't tolerate not being the main character for 2 hours. He swallowed hard enough for me to hear it through the phone. "She just wants to be part of things," he said. I told him being part of things requires listening to the people already in them. Here's where I'm at now. I don't have to think about whether I overreacted. I watched what happened when we tried to set a boundary and got a sidewalk stage show for our trouble. My husband and I agreed, no more kid events with them. School plays, parties, sports, recitals, if they're there, we're not, and vice versa. If he wants to see the kids, it will be at our house, with no surprises, and if there's even a whiff of a wig, the door stays closed. I put my daughter to bed tonight and she whispered, conspiratorially, "Do you think Kathy will dress up for Valentine's Day?" I laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Not for us." She hummed the chorus from the playlist the venue used and conked out in about 2 minutes, glitter still stuck to one eyebrow. I'm writing this with a half glass of wine and quiet in the house and a bag by the door holding a purple bracelet that somehow slipped into my coat pocket. It's cheap and already losing its shine. When I held it, I understood exactly why this feels like more than a party rule. It's not about a wig or a character or a sidewalk. It's about someone insisting on rewriting other people's moments to suit herself, even when you say no. Update 3. This morning started with a link and a knot in my stomach. A mom from the party texted me an Instagram reel, purple wig, bubble haze, a caption that read booked and busy. Pop star parties launching soon. Thank you to my daughter's name S family for having me. The venue sign was visible over her shoulder. 2 kids flashed past in the reflection of her ring light. Mine wasn't one of them, thank God, but one neon sneaker with the exact bead charm my daughter picked out last week might as well have been a fingerprint. I didn't bother with a polite DM. I called the venue manager. She had already reported the account for filming minors without consent and sent a note to their legal team. Then I tracked down Jacob, who turned out not to be a predator but a painfully earnest wedding shooter Kathy found on Facebook Marketplace. He answered on the second ring and said a string of apologies that tumbled over each other, said he'd already pulled the clips and would send me a statement if we needed one. He forwarded me his email chain with Kathy. Subject line, portfolio clearance / pop star concept. She had signed his contract, digitally, with my last name. I called my husband at work and listened to my own voice try to be calm. He had the better idea. He texted his coworker's wife, who is an attorney and also a human pit bull when crossed. She sent a formal demand letter and CC'd the venue and the photographer. 10 minutes later, the account went private. 20 minutes later, Kathy reposted the same clip on her personal Facebook with a caption about haters trying to stifle creativity. My sister, who knows to screenshot first and laugh second, sent it to me before it disappeared. The little progress bar at the top of the video looked like a countdown on a fuse. I was still deciding whether to crawl into a sweater and live there when the school called. Office line, calm voice. Hi, just checking, do you approve a Valentine's Pop Star Workshop for daughter's class on the 14th? We have a Kathy on the volunteer interest form saying she's your stepmother and can provide age-appropriate choreography and PR-ready candidates. We wanted to make sure that was sanctioned. She had written my daughter's teacher's name in glitter pen on a flyer. She had listed my kid as a featured birthday girl like it was a concert credit. I took a polite breath and used my good phone voice. No. Please put a note in the file that no outside performances happen for my child without written consent from me or my husband. And no photos. The office aide let out the tiniest laugh and said, understood, in a tone that told me this wasn't her first rodeo either. She also mentioned that the district requires background checks for volunteers, which Kathy does not have and will not be getting. I thought I had earned an hour of silence. Instead, I got a knock. My dad on my porch, bareheaded, winter jacket unzipped like he'd run from the car. He held a pastel bakery box and an envelope with my name written in, of course, purple gel pen. Peace offering, he said. His eyes were red around the rims, and for a second I felt a wash of old, stupid sympathy I didn't want. Is she in the car? I asked. No, he said. I told her I'd try to fix it. She's upset. She's upset, I repeated, because sometimes you have to hear the words out loud to confirm you haven't fallen through a trapdoor. He asked to come in. I said no. We stood there breathing fog at each other like 2 angry dragons. He held out the envelope. I didn't take it. He set it on the porch railing next to a frozen geranium. She wrote an apology, he said, and his voice snagged on the last word. She says she just wants you to understand. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A DoorDash notification. Your pop star Valentine kit has arrived. Photo attached. A white gift bag with tissue paper the exact lavender of the wig, sitting 2 feet behind my dad's shoes. Apparently she had sent it to surprise the little star. Inside, a child-size ultraviolet wig, rhinestone jacket with my daughter's name across the back, a printed performance schedule for the 14th with block letters that read, School, 12 p.m., 5 minutes demo, outside if necessary. And, because I no longer live in a world where this surprises me, a stack of glossy postcards advertising pop star parties by Kathy with the venue's exterior visible and a scene at my daughter's party, in italics. I handed the bag back to my father. My hands were very steady. Take it, I said. All of it. His mouth did this little fish thing, opening and closing like he had 5 different arguments and couldn't catch one. She's trying to build something, he managed. You don't have to like it, but do you have to ruin it? I said, she doesn't get to build it out of my child. He said, she thought the sidewalk. I said, I know what she thought. I'm telling you what happens now. Caitlin, and yes, I used her full name, I'm not going to pretend she's a comic book character, is blocked on everything. If she contacts our kid again, it's harassment. If she shows up to school, I will meet her there with the principal and a police report. You can see your granddaughter here, with notice, without her. If you bring her, the door doesn't open. He stared at my mailbox like it might have a better answer. Then he nodded, once, a tiny, broken hinge of a movement. She'll say I didn't stand up for her, he said. Not to me. Just to the air. I told him standing up for her and laying down next to her aren't the same thing. He did the oldest dad thing he knows how to do and tried to hand me a macaroon. When he left, I picked up the envelope because I'm not a complete monster, I don't need to pretend I'm not curious. The apology was 3 pages of purple cursive that managed, impressively, to say sorry without conceding any cause for apology. I'm deeply hurt you didn't see my heart, it read. Sometimes people with big hearts don't read rules like other people do. There was also a contract, printed, Highlighted, for a discounted family rate should I choose to book her services in the future. She had circled non-refundable deposit. I set the contract on fire in the sink. It curled up like a little witch hat and died. Things moved quickly after that. The venue's lawyer sent a short, lethal paragraph, the reel disappeared entirely, and so did the business account. The photographer emailed me a formal apology and a refund note, and then, because he's 22 and still thinks the world can be fixed if you're sincere enough, a link to a Google Drive where he'd already deleted every shot with a child in it. He also sent a screenshot Kathy had texted him, a media kit with my daughter's name spelled wrong and open to sponsorships. Across the bottom, by dinner, my sister had heard through the family grapevine that Kathy was blaming me for tanking her launch and my dad for letting me. He called again. He said he needed time. I told him take all the time he wants, quiet isn't a punishment over here. I put my daughter to bed under a string of paper hearts she cut out herself with safety scissors. She asked if she had to wear the jacket. I told her it was already gone. Good, she said, burrowed down, and fell asleep with one arm flung up like a conductor. The porch is empty now. The purple gel pen envelope is ash. The only thing left from the sidewalk is a faint ring of soap where the bubble juice dried, which my husband hosed away while I was brushing teeth. He stood in the cold in his pajama pants and a parka, and when he came back and he said, "There. No more residue." Update 4. Valentine's Day happened like a knock-knock joke with a cop at the punchline. At 10:17 a.m., my phone lit up with the school's number. The principal's voice was so level it made me sit down. "We've moved to a controlled release for the noon window," she said, which is educator for we're not freaking anyone out, but we're also not idiots. A woman in a purple wig had shown up at the front office with a clear backpack and an 8x10 headshot of herself. She introduced herself as my stepmother and asked where she could stage the demo. When they told her no, she produced a flyer with glitter pen hearts and asked to put it in teacher mailboxes. When they told her no again, she went outside and set up a ring light on the sidewalk and a small speaker that echoed through the breezeway like a karaoke machine coughing. The SRO handled it with the kind of gentle boredom that comes from doing this job long enough to have no adrenaline left. He told her she was not allowed to film children, that she was not allowed on campus without clearance, and that she was in his presence for exactly as long as it took him to fill out a district-wide no trespass order with her name on it. She tried the sidewalk line and then tried, "What if I just wave?" He looked at her like she had offered to juggle knives outside the ER and said, "No." She asked if she could at least leave Valentine bracelets for my daughter. He asked for her ID. She pulled it out like a rabbit, proud of the trick. He wrote slowly. She kept smiling until he asked for a mailing address. The smile twitched. The office called because they wanted to keep me in the loop and because they wanted, very clearly, to make sure I wasn't behind any of it. "We're honoring your note on file," they said. "We're sending an email to all parents about outside photography on school grounds." 5 minutes later, an all-call hit my inbox. "No outside performances, no non-staff photography, remember dismissal routes, thank you for keeping celebrations special and simple." It was so beautifully bland that I wanted to frame it. Pickup was delayed by 6 minutes, which my daughter used to distribute paper hearts with stickers she'd graciously graded herself. I watched the last of a chalk heart get power washed off the front walk by a custodian with a stoic expression and a hose like a wand. I saw the purple wig bob away at the far corner, a small and shrinking planet rolling out of orbit, the SRO keeping pace behind her like a shadow that file cabinets. When I got home, there was a certified letter email from the district with a PDF attached, notice of trespass, effective immediately, signed by the SRO and principal, with language that made my bones exhale. Any further attempt to access property may result in arrest. I read it twice, then I sent it to our attorney friend who responded with a thumbs up and a snake emoji, which told me she was in a good mood and ready to draft. Kathy posted a Valentine's Day story about being censored by public institutions with a pink filter so intense her eyebrows turned into highlighter swishes. Then it disappeared. My sister texted me that their aunt had commented, "This is not what community looks like," and my stomach did that half laugh, half flinch thing it does when someone else's family truth leaks into the room. Dad called, voice filled with cotton. "It's gotten out of hand," he said, and for a second I couldn't tell which it he meant. He asked to come by. I asked if he was alone. He paused long enough for me to feel every mile between our houses. "Yes," he said. He came with nothing in his hands, which felt like a relief. He sat in my kitchen and stared at the kids' valentines like they might bite him. Then he told me something I wish I didn't know. There's a binder at his place, purple of course, labeled launch. Inside are printed screenshots from my Instagram from before I nuked it, my kid's photo with a heart sticker over her face and the caption anchor client. There's a page that says pipeline, convert family to advocates, a sketch of my living room with balloon arch written in the margin, and a list of local daycares with checkboxes next to the one she'd cold emailed, using my last name in her signature. He put one of the printouts on the table with 2 fingers like it might burn him. My last name in the contract subject line Jacob had sent me wasn't a mistake. It's how she was pitching. He looked at me and did the thing where he tries to smile and all that comes out is ache. "She thinks if she builds hard enough, the world will move around her," he said. "I don't know how to tell her it won't without being the thing she hates." "You don't have to tell her anything," I said. You just have to stop handing her the hammer when she reaches for my kid. We sent the binder pages to the attorney. She didn't send an emoji this time. She sent a formal letter that was quiet and lethal and had phrases like false endorsement and unauthorized use of likeness and forgery by signing under a misrepresented name, CC'd to the district's legal and an officer at our local precinct, along with a request to attach the incident number. I went down to the station in my jeans and an old college sweatshirt, handed over a folder with printed screenshots and a copy of the No Trespass PDF and the portfolio clearance/popstar concept email where she'd used my last name like a stamp. I got an incident number that felt like a small steel bar across a door. Serving papers is not cinematic unless your brain likes to add a soundtrack. It happened at 3:50 p.m. on a Wednesday. A process server knocked on my dad's door and Kathy answered in a gray hoodie with the wig perched on a dresser behind her like a wounded bird. She tried to give him a flyer for a neon glow night at a rec center I've now called. He put the packet in her hand and said, "You've been served," and when she tried to hand it back, he took a step away and said, "No, ma'am," so politely it read as a slap. My father stood behind her looking like someone had put his heart on a copier and jammed the paper tray. She called me after. Blocked number, unknown caller, warble of breath. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to her say, "You made me into a monster," and then, a second later, "I am not dangerous," and then, a beat after that, "My heart is too big for your little rules." She has a way of stacking contradictions that would be impressive if it weren't exhausting. I saved the voicemail because sometimes you have to put things in a folder where they can't leak. The rec center canceled their demo after I sent them the district letter. The Pop Star Parties account rebranded for an afternoon into Glow Parties with C. It lasted 2 posts and a boomerang of a lava lamp before getting deleted. The photographer Jacob, who is making penance part-time now apparently, forwarded me a new email she'd sent him in which she asked if he knew any edgy schools that wouldn't mind content. He replied, "No," with a period so flat you could eat off it. My daughter had her classroom party without incident. She came home with a Ziploc bag of paper cards and 2 lollipops and the kind of sugar exhaustion that keeps kids extremely still for exactly 15 minutes. She asked me to braid her hair into 2 sensible braids for dinner, and I did, and we sang the chorus of a song she likes while boiling pasta. Ordinary felt like a revelation. Dad came by the next day. He looked like someone who had finally stopped holding a heavy bag. He said, "She left to stay with her sister," and then he said, "I told her I wouldn't fight you." He touched his coffee mug like it might run away. I told her I loved her and also that no means no. I don't know what happens to them next. I know what happens here. We have a stack of paper hearts on the fridge and a district letter in a folder and a rule that has nothing to do with costumes and everything to do with listening. The purple wig is, according to my sister who can't resist a thrift rack, sitting on a mannequin head at a consignment store 3 neighborhoods over with a hand-scrawled tag that says fun. In quotation marks. It feels right. Someone else can try it on. We're done being the mirror. Story 4. Told my stepdaughter I couldn't be her mom anymore after she exposed my past to our family and broke my trust. I am a woman in my late 30s, 36 to be exact, and I'm married to Josh, who is 40. He has a daughter, Ella, who just turned 18 and still lives at home while navigating her first year of university. I entered their world when Ella was 12, but I knew I had to be patient. She'd had such a rough experience. Her mother had been there, involved, then suddenly disappeared from both their lives after getting married when Ella was only 11. The abandonment shattered her, and Josh felt it best to hold off before I entered the picture. When Josh and I became engaged, it finally seemed like the right time to meet Ella, and from the start, something just clicked between us. We bonded hard and fast over a shared love of anime and video games. Countless evenings we spent side by side, binging different shows or competing in Mario Kart. When Josh and I married, I couldn't imagine not having her intimately involved. She was my junior bridesmaid, and I wanted her there for every happy, chaotic wedding planning milestone. To have her excitement and support meant the world to me. I'll never forget when she turned 14 and began to call me Mom. It was everything. We were inseparable, and for a while, it felt so right. But when Ella was 17, the unexpected happened. Her mother resurfaced. Josh and I agreed she could rebuild a relationship, seeing her mom once a month. Even then, she still called me Mom, but I felt something change. There was a new distance I'd never felt before. By her 18th birthday, she called me by my first name. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. Inside, I felt something small shatter. But I didn't let it change the way I treated her. She was still my daughter in every way that mattered and always would be, at least in my heart. It's important to me that you understand just how close we once were, and how drastically things shifted. 2 weeks ago, Ella asked to borrow some body lotion from my bedroom. She'd done it 1,000 times with no issues, so I gave a distracted sure. But this time, she lingered for what felt like forever. When I called her, no answer, I found her in my room looking startled, lotion in her hand, face pale. She bolted for the door. I brushed it off, assuming maybe she'd taken a lipstick. Annoying, sure, but not catastrophic. Days ticked by, and soon it was New Year's Eve. We'd invited Josh's parents and my sister for a cozy family dinner and countdown. During the excitement, I noticed my mother-in-law glancing at her phone, then whispering in her husband's ear. An odd tension spiked the atmosphere. He stood up, phone out, and called for Josh to look at something on the screen. Instantly, Josh went sheet white, panic washing over his face. He asked Ella to come talk with him in private, but she stood and, in front of everyone, announced, "Did you know that your wife is a WH-re?" Stunned, I watched as my mother-in-law thrust the phone in my face, a video playing, judgment and fury in her voice as she tore into me in full view of our families. My sister tried to step in, but Ella only escalated things, accusing me of cheating on Josh to her horrified grandparents, giving my mother-in-law even more fuel. The room exploded. My in-laws tried to turn Josh against me, calling me a liar and a bad fit, but Josh stood strong beside me. He knew my history long before. That only infuriated them further, and they left in a storm after a shouting match, Josh's father spitting out the word cuck like venom. My sister soon slipped away, hoping to give us space to breathe and process the devastation. That night, Josh, wanting to protect us both, dropped Ella at his parents' house so we could have some time to decompress. 2 days later, he brought her back while I was out, sat her down, and explained the truth. He'd known everything about my past work and had always been supportive. According to him, once she realized that, the magnitude of her mistake seemed to register. She broke down, apologized to him through tears, and confessed that her mother had told her everything about my past life. She hadn't believed it at first, until she dug up the tapes herself. Josh called me, but what he didn't say was that Ella was sitting beside him on speaker. I told him, honestly, vulnerably, that I couldn't be near her, that I couldn't keep being her mother after what happened. Ella burst into tears overhearing me, then said she would stay at her grandparents' house a while to let things cool off. That's where things have stood. My in-laws, meanwhile, have busied themselves spreading my business to everyone, dragging my name through the mud, and still, despite having every chance, Ella hasn't corrected their narrative. That, more than anything, stings. I know she's only a teenager, and I know trauma is complicated. But even so, I can't just bounce back, not after the things she said and the chaos she unleashed. I wish I could go back to the comfort of our bond, but trust is broken, and her apology, while genuine, doesn't erase what happened. Here's some added clarity, since so many have been curious. I was 20 when I made my first movie. Yes, DVDs were around back then. Ella pieced things together online after finding one of my old DVDs. I never thought to hide them. Truthfully, I'd kept the DVDs because I'd taken some pride in my work, and Josh actually asked that I keep some he liked. It never crossed my mind that Ella would snoop through my things for dirt. She wasn't supposed to even know, certainly not like this. Her mother? She found out because she stayed friends with my ex, who was there during that time in my life. I want to make it clear, I don't hate Ella. I just need time. Time to process, to breathe, to figure out if I can forgive, and, if so, how to start rebuilding any kind of relationship after this. And yes, therapy is absolutely on the table. Ella is trying to make it right, but for now, the pain she caused is still too fresh. Certainly. Here's how the story might read, told entirely from the author's first-person point of view, with all the necessary context included for a fluid and engaging narrative. I'm still grappling with everything that's happened, and I can't bring myself to forgive her or pretend as if things could just go back to how they were before. Let me explain. All my life, I thought of my sister-in-law as family. From the moment I married into this family, she seemed determined to dislike me, finding ways to exclude me, talking behind my back, doing everything possible to make me feel like an outsider. For years, I tried to make things work for the sake of my husband and his family, believing that eventually things would get better if I was just patient and kind. Then, things came to a head. She did something so cruel and hurtful, something she openly admitted was done simply to hurt me. I confronted her, desperate for some understanding, but she didn't care. She even laughed about it. So, I told her I didn't want a relationship with her anymore. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't keep exposing myself to that level of hostility and disrespect. Here's the part that confuses me the most. Suddenly, I was the villain. My in-laws started treating me as if I was the bad guy who was tearing the family apart. They pressured me to forgive her for the good of the family, as if her years of mistreatment never happened and as if my feelings didn't matter. They kept saying I should be the bigger person and just let it go, but why is the burden always on me to make peace, to keep the family together, to just accept being hurt? I'm exhausted. How is it that she could hurt me so deliberately, admit it, and yet I'm expected to be the one to make things okay again? I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive her or allow her back into my life. And deep down, I don't think I should be forced to. As for the rest of my in-laws, I can't help but feel angry at how little they seem to care about what's been done to me, and how quick they are to paint me as the problem. Maybe one day I'll have the strength to forgive, or at least move on, but right now, all I know is that I can't pretend nothing happened. And frankly, I'm tired of being told that I should. Update 1. This might not be the update some would hope for, but it's probably what most would expect. Before I get into what happened recently, I need to give some background about Ella's mother and my relationship with her. For the sake of clarity, I'll call Ella's mother Lori. Lori and I are not on good terms. Back when Lori and Josh were together, Josh and I were actually friends. There was never anything romantic between us back then, our relationship was entirely platonic. After some time, Though, Lori started to get very uncomfortable with my friendship with Joshua. Instead of coming to me directly, she began asking people about me and eventually got some information through my ex-boyfriend. That's when she discovered I had previously been a porn actress, and she absolutely lost it. She accused me of trying to seduce her boyfriend and started calling me a WHRE and a homewrecker, spreading nasty rumors about me to friends Josh and I had in common. Josh ultimately broke up with her after she started threatening me with violence. After their breakup, they became single co-parents to Ella. And just to be absolutely clear, I never, ever had an affair with Josh. Around 2014 to 2015, Lori started seeing someone new. It wasn't long before she moved in with this new boyfriend, even though Josh did not consent to Ella meeting him. Lori's new partner was more than just sketchy, he made everyone uneasy, especially Joshua. Josh didn't hesitate to tell Lori how he felt, which only led to constant arguments about Ella's safety. Josh would frequently threaten to keep Ella away from Lori, and after every fight, Lori would completely disappear for weeks at a time. During these silent stretches, Ella would be asking and longing for her mom, but Lori never reached out. Despite all the boundaries Lori bulldozed through, Josh still kept his promise not to introduce me to Ella until we were engaged. When Ella and I finally met, she and I bonded almost instantly. This made Lori furious. She despised the idea of a so-called homewrecker being involved in her daughter's life, and it stung even more that Josh proposed to me after only 2 years, when he'd never offered Lori the same. One day, when Lori was supposed to pick up Ella from our house, she and Josh got into an argument. The situation escalated fast. Lori slapped him across the face. That was the last straw for Joshua. He told her never to set foot in his home again and that he'd involve the police if she did. Lori stormed out, and instead of picking up Ella as she was supposed to, she vanished and left Ella with us. Later, when Josh tried to reach out, he discovered he was blocked on everything. Months passed before we learned Lori had secretly married her sketchy boyfriend. She'd told no one, not even Ella. Even though Lori blocked Josh everywhere, Ella sometimes managed to text her and get a reply, but Lori never put in the work to see her own daughter, not until 2024, when my husband started taking the initiative and arranging meetups so they could reconnect. And now, with all that history between us, here's what happened recently. Update 2. My husband recently confronted Lori about everything that had happened. Many people around us had begun to point out that Ella was being influenced by her mother, and as it turned out, they were right. Lori confessed to my husband that she had told Ella I was cheating on him. She had even dredged up my past, trying to convince Ella that I was someone who slept around a lot. My husband was furious, so angry, in fact, that he called Lori miserable and insecure, and let her have it until she blocked him again. Not long after that blow-up, my stepdaughter returned home. Ella showed up at our door, holding a handwritten note and looking nervous. She handed it to me, apologizing for everything she'd done, especially the terrible incident on New Year's. Reading her words brought a flood of emotions that made me break down in tears. In the note, she poured out all the feelings she had bottled up for so long. She wrote about how devastated she was when she believed I had cheated on her dad, how she cried and mourned what she thought had been the destruction of our relationship. She told me she realized now how foolish she'd been to believe her mother's lies. She confessed she had always loved me, that in her heart she thought of me as her real mother, but as long as Lori was present in her life, she felt cornered, forced to choose loyalty to her out of a sense of blood ties. Even though she wanted to be close to me, she felt compelled to side with her mom. I needed her to explain the note to me face to face, so my husband and I sat down with her to talk it all through. The conversation was raw and emotional. I finally allowed myself to cry in front of her and told her just how much her distance had wounded me. My husband, too, teared up, overwhelmed by everything that had come to light. It ended up being far more healing than I had expected. My anger toward Ella was gone, though some resentment lingered in the background. I won't pretend otherwise, but overall, I left that talk feeling so much lighter. Ella stayed the night. The next morning, things felt awkward between us, but at least we could tolerate it. Later that day, we had another talk, this time about her mother. Ella made it clear she wasn't ready to completely cut Lori off, but she was planning to distance herself, for a while. I suggested family therapy, which someone else had mentioned to me, but Ella said she wasn't interested. I respected her feelings, and for now, we settled into an uneasy but civil relationship. I honestly don't know if we'll ever have what we once did, but I feel a cautious optimism that things might get better. That morning, I also reached out to Josh's parents, with Josh sitting by my side throughout the call. Their apology was awkward and clearly forced. They said they didn't agree with my past but apologized for accusing me of cheating on my husband. Josh's dad even took a moment to apologize directly to Josh for the harsh words he'd used. They never really said sorry for all the degrading names they called me, and that stung, but for now, I'll take what I can get and call it a small victory. Looking back on everything, I realized there was a lot of criticism about how Josh handled the phone call with Ella. I hadn't been that upset with him initially, but after thinking it over, and seeing how it played out, I did start to see why it was a jerk move. We talked it out, and he apologized. His intention had been to let Ella face the consequences of her actions, but he never expected me to declare that I didn't want to be her mother anymore. I forgave him, because honestly, we both made mistakes. I chose to take on the role of stepmother when I married her father, and I'll never forget that responsibility or the love I feel for her. So I won't hold that one moment against Josh, given that I had my own regrets. That's where things stand now. I've tried to be as clear and honest as possible. It's been a difficult journey, but despite the messiness, I can finally see a path forward. Update 3. She texted me on Tuesday and asked if she could come by without Joshua. She looked wrung out, sleep deprived, hair in a messy bun, the same oversized hoodie she used to steal from Josh when she had a cold. She set the box on our kitchen table and asked if I could sit down. My stomach dropped before she lifted the lid. Inside were printed screenshots, dozens, maybe 100, of text threads. Blue and gray chat bubbles, date stamps, a few blurred phone numbers, and at the top of all of them, names that made my mouth go dry: Mom, Lori, and Mom J, which is what Josh's parents go by in Ella's phone. She found them because Josh's mom's iPad and phone synced to the same Apple account, and Ella had been using the iPad at their house to do a paper. The messages were old and recent, a steady timeline of rot. Lori and my mother-in-law had been talking for months. They weren't just swapping gossip, they were coordinating. There it was in writing, links Lori sent with my stage name, screenshots of my old covers, lines like "she's not what she pretends to be" answered by "Josh refuses to see it." And then, dated in December, "due at New Year's. Everyone will be there." Followed by, "ask her for something from her room and look around. Grab anything you find." The word lotion was right there, black and white, with a stupid little emoji after it. I read until I felt sick. Ella was shaking, pointing to places she'd highlighted, her voice breaking as she tried to explain how she'd ignored the iPad for weeks and then opened it, intending to watch a lecture, and the messages were sitting right there. She scrolled to the part where my mother-in-law sent Lori a picture of our dining room table with countdown at 9. Bring proof underneath. Lori had replied with a short video clip, the one my in-laws shoved at my face on New Year's. I couldn't tell if I wanted to throw up or put my fist through the wall. Josh came home while we were still at the table. He didn't say a word at first, he just pulled out a chair and started reading. He kept swallowing hard. When he reached the line where his mother wrote, "He'll thank us later," he closed his eyes and rubbed his temples like he was trying to push the words back into the paper. We got in the car. His parents live 15 minutes away. He didn't call ahead. We walked in and his mom looked so relieved to see Ella behind us that, for a split second, I thought maybe this could be a different conversation. Then Josh put the stack on their coffee table and asked her to read out loud the part where she tells Lori to make sure Ella sees what she needs to see. She kept denying what was in her own words even while they were in her hand. You don't know context. Those could be fake. And then, when Ella tapped on the message information and showed her the matching timestamps to her phone, the tune changed to "I did what any mother would do. I protected my son," and finally, if she had nothing to hide, none of this would have happened. Josh didn't yell. He just asked for our spare key back, held out his hand, and when his father started to bluster, Josh said, "You were willing to blow up my family to prove a point. We are done until you can admit what you did and apologize to my wife and my daughter. Both. Full stop." I don't remember leaving. I remember getting to the car and realizing my hands were shaking too hard to put my seatbelt on, and Ella, from the back seat, silently, reaching forward and clipping it for me like she used to do when she was 10 and thought it was funny to be helpful. That night, Lori started calling Ella's phone. Back to back to back until Ella turned it off. She switched to Instagram DMs, and when those got blocked, she emailed. I only know the gist because Ella read one line out loud, "Don't you dare embarrass me," and then closed her laptop and said she was tired of being the rope in a tug of war. The next morning, she went to campus security with Josh and filed an incident report, not because she wanted to start a legal battle but because she wanted a paper trail. She asked them to put a no trespass notice on file for Lori if she came to her dorm uninvited. They didn't blink. They told her exactly what to do if it happened again and gave her a number to call. Two things happened after that I didn't see coming. The first, Ella asked if she could send a message to Josh's family group chat from our house. Not a manifesto, just a clean correction. She typed while I made tea, then handed the phone to Josh before she hit send. "I need you to see it," she said, "so it doesn't feel like I'm doing this behind your back." It was one paragraph. She said she'd accused me of cheating and it was a lie. She said she'd apologized to us and was trying to fix what she broke. She said if anyone had questions, they could talk to her, not about me. No one responded for 20 minutes, and then Josh's sister sent a thumbs up, and then his mother left the chat. I stood at the sink and stared at the lemon floating in my mug until the timer on the stove beeped for no reason. The second, Ella asked me to go with her to a meeting with her academic advisor. She has a scholarship that requires an updated emergency contact, and apparently she'd left hers blank when all of this blew up. I said I wasn't sure it was a good idea, maybe Josh should go, but she shook her head. "Dad will be there if I faint," she said, making a joke out of breath, "but I need you to sit next to me." I sat next to her. I watched her spell my name for the form and then stop, look at me, and say, "Do you want me to put your last name or mine?" We compromised. She put both. Later that afternoon, a friend from my past reached out, a woman I worked with years ago. She said someone had been emailing old producers with my legal name, trying to license my scenes under it. She wanted me to know so I could get ahead of it. It felt like being yanked underwater again, but this time I wasn't alone. Josh called our lawyer. We sent DMCA notices for the couple of clips that had popped up with my full name attached. It was tedious and dehumanizing, sure, but it was also an unexpected relief to watch those links go dark one by one. There's no neat end to that piece, it's whack-a-mole. But I didn't have to explain myself to anyone while we did it. That counted. Small things have started to feel big again. Ella knocked on our bedroom door yesterday and asked if she could borrow a hoodie before class. I handed one over, and she hesitated in the doorway like she was waiting for permission to say something vulnerable and didn't know how to ask for it. I booked the therapy, she finally said. I want to do it with both of you. I think that's the only way I'm going to stop bracing every time my phone buzzes. We picked a time together and put it on the calendar with an orange heart. I don't know why the color matters, but it made me breathe easier. I don't have a bow to tie this with. My in-laws are quiet. Lori is angrier at being caught than she ever was at losing us, which tells me everything I need to know. Ella is still 18 and still learning how to be braver than the adults who raised her. Last night we ate takeout on the couch and put on a dumb anime we've probably watched 6 times. Somewhere between episode 2 and 3, she fell asleep with my cardigan over her legs, and I realized I wasn't rigid anymore. Not fixed, not back to normal. Just, not bracing. When it was time for bed, I woke her gently and asked if she wanted a ride back to campus or the guest room. She rubbed her eyes and said, in that groggy voice that makes her sound 6 years old, guest room, please. At the door she turned back, like she had one more thing to add and was frightened of it. I'm not ready to call you mom again, she said, but I think I miss you like a mom. Is that okay? Update 4. We kept the orange heart on the calendar for a week, like a dare to not cancel. The therapist's office was warmer than I expected and smelled faintly of eucalyptus. There was a box of tissues on a low table and a bowl of smooth river stones next to it, which felt a little on the nose, but also, fine. I was grateful for anything to do with my hands. Ella tucked both sleeves into her palms and sat so straight she looked like she was trying to take up less space than physics allows. The therapist started with ground rules about not interrupting and not fixing, then asked Ella to tell me what she'd been afraid to say. I didn't just find out on New Year's, she said, voice shaking. I knew for a few weeks and I was looking for proof that it was as bad as my mom said so I could hate you, clean. She stopped, swallowed. And then when I found the DVDs, I felt sick, and then guilty for feeling sick, and I wanted to hurt you back for making me feel anything at all. There was a clock somewhere that ticked just loud enough to be company. I told her the exact moment I heard her switch from mom to my first name, and how my body learned to brace as if a glass was about to hit the floor. Josh rubbed his jaw and stared at the rug like it might split open and show him a different ending. The therapist didn't try to fix anything. She just asked us to make 3 sentences we could live with. I said, no more going through my things. Ella said, no more speakerphone surprises. Josh said, if you're drowning, you tell me before you pull me under. We didn't cry the way I thought we would. It was smaller and cleaner than that. When the hour was up, Ella squeezed my hand once like it was a button that could undo January. In the parking lot, Ella's phone lit up with a notification from her RA. Someone's in the lobby asking for you. She went still. We were 5 minutes from campus. We drove there with the sound off, no radio, the 3 of us in a row of small breaths. The lobby's fluorescent lights made everyone look like they hadn't slept in a week. Lori was at the front desk with her sunglasses pushed on top of her head like a tiara and a smile plastered on that didn't reach anywhere meaningful. When she saw us she dropped it. What the hell do you think you're doing? She said to me, like we'd picked her lock. The desk attendant, a sophomore with a lanyard and the calm of someone whose job is to be a wall, held up a hand and said, gently, that they'd need to step outside. Lori got louder. You have no right to take my child from me, and then she clocked the campus security officer walking over. Josh didn't raise his voice. Back up, Lori, he said. You're in violation of the notice she filed. The security officer asked for IDs like it was any other Tuesday. Lori ranted about brainwashing and that woman, and then, when the officer told her about the no trespass order being active on campus property, she pivoted. I just wanted to bring her soup, she said, and finally looked at Ella. Don't you dare embarrass me, Lori hissed. Ella's shoulders dropped, not in defeat, more like in a decision. You already did, she said, so quietly it felt like something private, to me. Security walked her to the sidewalk and stood with her until she left. We didn't clap or sigh or any of the things you do when a scene is over. Ella touched my elbow and said, can we go upstairs for a minute? I don't want to smell her while I'm trying to sleep. That night, after it should have been over, another wave hit. The old licensing email popped back up, this time with a signature attached, an actual company name and a phone number. Josh forwarded it to our lawyer, who called the number on speaker. A man answered with the name of a small HVAC business 2 towns over. When the lawyer mentioned the email address, there was a pause and then the sound of someone cupping the receiver. A different voice got on, sharp, too loud. Who is this? It was Lori's husband. I recognized the Edge from one ruined pickup in 2015. The lawyer introduced himself, explained the violations and the damages, and the voice got slippery. My wife thought, he started, then stopped. She thought what? The lawyer asked. There was a soft curse and then the line went dead. Within an hour, the email account disappeared, and the 2 clips we'd flagged earlier went down. It wasn't a victory dance, it was a door quietly closing, but it was still a door. The next morning there was a foil-covered pan on our porch that steamed through the February air. No note, just the smell of basil and the crooked shadow of a man waiting at the bottom of our stairs. Josh opened the door. His father stood there with his cap in his hands like he'd forgotten what to do with them. "Your mother doesn't know I came," he said. "She thinks she's right. I can't make her stop that." He looked at me, then at Ella, who was sitting cross-legged on the sofa in my cardigan again, and his eyes went red in that helpless way that makes everyone feel 14. "I'm sorry I didn't stop it. I'm sorry I held the phone. I thought I was saving you from something. I was wrong." He took our spare key out of his pocket and set it on the railing. "I'll stay away until you say otherwise," he said, and then, quieter, to Ella, "I love you, kiddo." She nodded without standing up. He walked back to his truck without once looking at his phone, and something in my chest loosened at the lack of theater in it. Later that day, Ella forwarded an email from the scholarship office. They needed to confirm her emergency contact after the campus report. We sat at the dining table with her laptop between us. "You can put your dad," I said, trying to be cool about wanting to be picked. She shook her head. "No. Dad doesn't answer unknown numbers," she said, picking a fight with humor. "You pick up for everybody." She typed my full name and then, carefully, hyphenated it with hers. "Temporary," she said, like we were bartering for a longer leash. I watched the cursor blink and felt my eyes sting in that stupid way they do when the body is fine and the heart is making a scene. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, a photo of a folded letter on a kitchen table and the words, "She wants to apologize but only if you say sorry first." It was from Josh's sister. I stared at the gray bubble for a long time and typed, "We don't do ifs." She sent back, "Understood," and then, after a beat, another photo, her own handwritten message to the family group chat, telling them she was done being triangulated and to stop looping her in on anything that didn't directly involve her. It was so simple it felt radical. I thought that would be the last hit of the week. It wasn't. At midnight, Ella called from the sidewalk outside her dorm, breath fogging on the camera. "My stomach's being dramatic," she said, and I could hear the edge of panic under the joke. "I don't want to go to the ER alone." I put on shoes and met her in 15 minutes. The ER was fluorescent and eternity flavored. Ella lay on the bed with an 4 in her arm and watched the monitor like it owed her money. When the nurse asked for her emergency contact, Ella didn't look at me when she said my name, just said it like it had always been the answer and she'd forgotten to mention it. Somewhere around 3 a.m., she drifted off. A resident joked that half the campus was in with stress stomachs and wrote a prescription for antacids and sleep. When they discharged her, the nurse printed a page with aftercare notes, underlined the contact line, and said, "We'll call her mom if anything changes." Nobody corrected her. We just walked out into the cold and the sound of the vending machine humming through the wall, and for the first time in weeks, my body didn't brace. Back home, sometime between the clink of the kettle and the toaster popping like a starter pistol, Ella left her phone face down on the counter. A message lit up the screen from an unknown number, "You're ungrateful." She flipped the phone over and exhaled through her nose like she was putting a fire out with breath alone, then blocked it without ceremony. "Breakfast sandwich?" she asked me, like she was offering a treaty. I nodded. She handed me a mug and bumped my shoulder with hers and said, with a tiny smile that felt like a miracle we didn't have to name, "Thanks, M. Update 5. The first envelope was thin and mean. "We regret to inform you." Ella stood at the kitchen counter and read it twice like a test she'd studied for and still failed. Denied store card. Address on the application was a P.O. box in a town I only ever drive through to get to better places. Her name. Her birthday. The last 4 of her SSN. She put the letter down very carefully, like it might bite, and said, "I never applied for anything." By noon we were sitting with a bank associate who had a smile that didn't move her eyes and a green pen she kept clicking when she was thinking. Ella answered the security questions, voice steady until they got to mother's maiden name, and then she laughed once, not because anything was funny. "Freeze, fraud alert, passwords changed." The associate said, "Put a lock on any account that can be a door," and handed Ella a little stack of brochures that made me want to set something on fire. We filed the report at the station with an officer who smelled like coffee and winter air. He didn't blink when Ella said the names. He asked for copies of the denial letter and the screenshots of the licensing emails and the born-again HVAC number. "Paper trail is your friend," he said, like the campus guard last week had called. He wrote down the P.O. box and nodded when Josh mentioned the business name, then asked Ella if anyone else had her SSN. Ella looked like she'd been punched. "My mom took a photo of my card when I was getting my license," she said. "She said it was in case I lost it." The officer's mouth went flat. He gave Ella a case number and told her someone from financial crimes would follow up, and if she got another denial letter, not to throw it away. "Trash is evidence," he said, almost apologetically. The next morning we sat on a wooden bench outside a courtroom that smelled faintly like dust and lemon cleaner while our lawyer went in to file for a harassment protective order. The carpet was the color of old money. Ella picked at a hangnail and then tucked her hands under her legs like she could hide them from the world. When our names were called, she stood up too fast and had to sit back down, then stood again slower, like a second try. The judge was one of those people who make silence feel like a tool. Our lawyer laid out the messages, the campus incident, the email signature that tried to pretend to be a company and failed. The judge read for a long time. Lori didn't show. Her husband didn't either. When our lawyer got to the part about the P.O. box and the denial letter, the judge made a small face, almost nothing, just a tiny muscle near his eye giving up and telling the truth before the rest of him caught up. I'm granting a temporary order, he said. No contact, no third-party contact, no showing up at school, home, or work. We'll review in 30 days. He looked at Ella. If anything happens between now and then, you call 911. You don't argue with anyone on a sidewalk. She nodded. Her mouth opened like she was going to say thank you and then closed again because there wasn't a word big enough to fit the moment without breaking the bench we were sitting on. We made it to the lobby before we saw Josh's father. He stood by the security line with his cap in his hands again and that same helpless red around his eyes. His wife wasn't with him. He didn't try to hug anyone. He just said, I heard, like news was a thing that needed permission. I'll testify if you need me to, he added, and that landed like a neutral temperature, not warm, not cold, useful. When we walked past, he didn't ask for a hug. He kept his hands on his cap like it was a steering wheel in a storm. I can't forgive that day in one clean sweep, but every time he chooses something quiet instead of performative, something heavy unclenches. On the way home we stopped at a strip mall pho place with plastic chopsticks and a cracked white cup and a television bolted to the ceiling playing a game show with the sound off. Steam fogged Ella's glasses and she took them off and wiped them on her sleeve like the lens could make the world less blurry if she just got the angle right. She held her phone in one hand like it was a tiny bomb with a long fuse. I'm changing my number, she said, and I don't want any contact name in my phone to be an argument. She opened her contacts, thumb hovering, and looked at me. Can I put you in as? She didn't finish the sentence. She typed M and an orange heart and hit save like the simplest thing in the world is sometimes the bravest. We changed our locks that afternoon anyway, not because the spare key was back but because I wanted the sound of a new bolt catching. The locksmith showed up in a van with a cartoon key painted on the side and hummed while he worked. He handed me 2 copies and said, these are weighted different, you'll feel it, and I did. In the entryway, I pressed a key into Ella's palm. You don't have to take it, I said. She slid it onto her chain without ceremony, between the dorm fob and a gummy bear charm she'd had since middle school. I want to be able to come home, she said, simple as that. At the very end of the day, when I thought the quiet had finally earned itself a chair, my phone buzzed with a new email from the scholarship office. We received an anonymous tip regarding your household and the appropriateness of guardians listed. The edges of my vision went prickly. And then, 2 minutes later, a second email from the same address. Please disregard the previous message. We are aware of harassment affecting several students. Your emergency contact is a matter for you to decide. We've added a note to your file. I don't know if that was policy or somebody's spine, but I wanted to drop off a bouquet for the whole office. Therapy the next day was quieter. We sat on the same couch, the same bowl of river stones, and the same eucalyptus that was starting to feel like a person who lives in the room. Ella talked about the part of her that keeps waiting for the other shoe to fall and the other part that's tired of standing on her toes. Josh talked about how he wants to fix everything with a hammer and how useless that is when what needs fixing is under the skin. I said I didn't want to parent like a haunted house, with jump scares behind every door. The therapist asked Ella what boundaries she wanted on paper, not air. No pop-ups, she said, then glanced at me. Not from you. I mean from her. She looked at the floor and then, without being prompted, added, and if I feel cornered and I want to run, I'll tell you I feel cornered before I start a fire. She took a river stone and put it in her pocket like homework you can carry. Lori tried a different door that night. A text from a new number with a local area code and a message that was a paragraph of accusation wearing forgiveness like a Halloween costume. If you apologize for turning my child against me, I will consider letting you back into my life, it ended, and I laughed out loud, ugly and a little unhinged. Ella blocked the number without letting the dots bubble for breath. We don't do ifs, she said, almost echoing me without knowing it, and set her phone face down like an exorcism. 2 days later, a woman from Financial Crimes called and asked Ella if she'd be willing to come in and sign one more form. We tracked the applications to an IP that pings off a private router registered to a residential address, she said, reading like she knew the jargon was the price of admission to the part where humans live. She gave an address. It was Lori's. Ella didn't cry. She took a breath like she was learning a new instrument and said, yes. We sat in a tiny office with a plastic plant and a calendar for a charity 5K happening in a month that felt like another country. The woman slid the form across the desk and said, I am sorry, then added, and it's okay to be angry and still keep writing your name neatly. I expected a blow up after that, some grand gesture of rage, a public scene turned up to 11. Nothing came. Instead, a manila envelope showed up in our mailbox with no return address and 3 pieces of paper inside, a credit card denial, a photocopy of Ella's birth certificate, and a single line, handwritten, that said, "Tell your father to stop hiding behind lawyers." I put the paper back in the envelope and drove it to the station without touching anything with my skin. Back home, I washed my hands until the water ran cold and then kept them under until it hurt. That night Ella texted me from her dorm. "Can you send me the recipe for that stupid lemon pasta?" I sent it and then, without thinking, added, "I can make it and bring it instead." There was a pause long enough to make me second guess the whole planet, and then, come. I packed the pan in a towel and drove with the smell of garlic sitting in the car like a passenger. In her tiny kitchen, she stirred without really needing to and said, "There's a guy in my lit class who asked me to study. It's not a date, but I'm anxious anyway." She looked up at me like she was checking a weather report. "It's okay to be anxious," I said. "It doesn't mean you're wrong." She nodded and tucked her hair behind her ear, and for a second I saw her at 12 and at 18 and at 40, all at once, the same particular determined tilt to her mouth. On the way out, a girl at the end of the hall said, "Night, Mom," to someone behind me, and Ella laughed in a kind of quiet way that didn't ask anything of anybody. Back in the car, the radio caught a song we used to yell sing in the kitchen while burning pancakes, and I let it play. My phone buzzed once before I pulled away. A text from Ella, "I'm not ready to say it. But I feel it." Then, a beat later, a single orange heart. I sat in the parked car with the engine off and the house lights of the dorm reflected in the windshield like constellations somebody made up for exactly this. I didn't brace. I just breathed. Story 5. Coworker secretly filmed me at a bar to prove I'm not disabled. Now she's threatening to expose me to our bosses. I live with chronic pain. The way I usually describe it to people who don't have it is like this. Imagine pain is on a scale from 1 to 10. Most people hover comfortably around a 2 or 3 just from the little aches and bumps you get from daily life. People with chronic pain like me? We're usually at a 6, all the time. Picture what it feels like when you step on a Lego or hit your funny bone. A sharp, sudden 8, but for me, it's like I've pulled a muscle, and the pain and discomfort won't go away. It's my daily routine. Some days, I get even higher on the pain scale. Very rarely, I'll have a blessed day where I drop to a 4, or even lower if I'm really lucky. But overall, I stay active and push through. I do own canes, but only use them when my pain spikes to a 7 or higher. One of those days landed on me this past Sunday. On top of my full-time job, I also work part-time. Because I'm both physically and legally disabled, I made sure all my paperwork was filed with my part-time job. My car has the handicap marker on the license plate and the placard hanging from my mirror. I recently got moved to a location closer to my home, which I love. The team is great. My boss, Amy, is amazing. Casey, my coworker, and I share the same job title as assistant coordinators under Amy. The reason for my transfer was that the location expanded and needed more hands, so they brought me in. Casey has made it pretty clear she's aiming for a promotion, and everyone knows it. I've always been upfront that I'm not interested. Any promotion would mean going full-time, but I already have a full-time job. I do this part-time gig to pad my savings and because I genuinely enjoy the work. Staying busy helps with my anxiety, too. Now, Casey works hard, but she also has this habit of talking over me or jumping to take on tasks before I can get to them. Then she'll broadcast to everyone, "Oh, I handled that for you, don't worry." In the beginning, it got under my skin, but eventually, I just let it slide. Still, I went to Amy about it. I want to pull my own weight, but Casey's competitive attitude can make that pretty hard. We're supposed to split tasks evenly. Amy promised to talk to her, but honestly, nothing really changed, and I just accepted it for what it is. When I came in on Monday with my cane, I could practically feel the questions hanging in the air. I'd already emailed Amy Sunday night to let her know, but I'm a private person, so I just told everyone else that I have a condition that sometimes requires a cane. Amy was great. She gave me tasks that required little or no movement. I got everything done fast and called over the radio to ask if there was anything else I could do. Casey jumped in with a "No, I've got it," so I tackled some of the admin work that usually goes untouched. I replied, "Okay, I'll tackle the admin list, then," and she said she had that, too, but Amy cut in with a thank you to me and confirmed it would actually be helpful. I still needed my cane the next day. It was pretty much the same setup. I worked through the admin tasks, and Amy was thrilled to have everything done. She thanked me for coming in and pushing through, instead of calling out. Casey made a weird comment that she could have helped, but I just said thanks and told her I appreciated her handling the more physical tasks. We ended up walking to the parking lot together, and she suddenly asked which car was mine. I pointed it out. Then she said, "So I know you're not disabled, by the way." I stared. She repeated, "Just no cane tomorrow, okay?" "I won't tell. Just no cane tomorrow." I stood there, baffled, but I was supposed to meet my best friend, Joy, so I just left. That night, Joy and I went to the bar and had a great time. I brought my cane, but honestly, I didn't always use it. Sometimes I'd leave it at the table to walk over to the bar for another drink, or when I got up to give Joy a big hug goodbye. The next morning, my pain was through the roof, even higher than usual. Of course, I took my cane. I texted Amy to let her know I was still managing but would need tasks I could do in small bursts. When I showed up at work, Casey saw my cane and went bright red. Like furious. I did my usual hellos and she completely ignored me. When we got our assignments, she snidely asked, "Well, can you handle that with your cane and all?" Amy looked at her like she had 3 heads. I calmly said I'd manage, thanked her for her concern, and got to work. Casey immediately started her racing act, beating me to every task and chiming in on the radio, "Don't strain yourself. I already handled X task, or I finished Y for you." It was non-stop. Later, we ended up leaving at the same time, and this time, she pulled out her phone and showed me a video. It was me, at the bar with Joy. "Why do you have a video of me?" I asked, creeped out. "It's proof," she said. "Proof of what?" I asked. "Proof that you're not disabled. Look at you, wounded at work, but no cane at the bar." My mind spun. This is not how chronic pain works. Of course I can stand up to hug a friend or walk a few steps to get a drink. What I can't do is crouch and organize a bottom drawer at work without a chair. I wanted to explain all the nuances, that chronic pain is a spectrum, that if she'd left the physical tasks alone I'd have done them at my own pace. But she cut me off. "No cane tomorrow. I'm serious. Or I'm going to Chad." "Chad is Amy's boss." I asked, "About what?" But she was already storming off to her car. It felt creepy and aggressive, and honestly, Chad would know this is nonsense. His boyfriend has chronic pain, too. I'm not really worried about being found out, but the whole thing unsettled me. As soon as I got home, I started an email to Amy and CC'd Chad, explaining what's been happening. I get anxious and paranoid easily, so part of me wonders if I'm overreacting and making it worse, but this doesn't feel normal. I sent the email. I also texted Amy and Chad about what was going on. "This morning, my pain is just as bad, about a 7, and it's cold today, so even if I wanted to leave my cane at home, I couldn't." I texted Amy again so she could start figuring out today's workflow. As for my Lego pain metaphor, I realize it isn't some medical chart. Stepping on a Lego is just a funny example for people who don't really get what living with this feels like. Chronic pain is different for everyone, which is why I tried to paint a picture. All I want is to do my job, keep my independence, and not have to justify my pain to someone following me with a camera. I saw a few comments telling me not to use the term CP. I just want to clarify, in my context, I'm referring to chronic pain. I honestly don't understand why it's come across as an issue or if it's upsetting to anyone, but I'm using it solely within that medical context, nothing else. Anyway, Amy and Chad have both responded, so we'll see how things go today. For now, I have to dive back into work. This was my first real break at my full-time job, so I just wanted to check in quickly before heading back. Update 1. Today was weirdly quiet, and that almost made it worse. I could sense that everyone knew something, even if it wasn't the full story. At the very least, they knew something was up. Normally, Casey and I run into each other during check-in, since our shifts usually overlap. But today, I had no clue when she even arrived. I didn't spot her anywhere. Turns out, they'd assigned her to the back office for other tasks, with her hours quietly reduced, while I got put at the admin booth at the entrance. They definitely took advantage of my spreadsheet and paperwork skills. I had to laugh at that, even if it felt a little like a punishment. Given everything that's happened so far, I didn't want to be caught off guard this time. So as soon as I got to work, I turned on a voice recorder app on my phone, just in case. I even set up a shortcut on my home screen to start recording quickly if things got weird. It felt a little silly at first, but that feeling was way better than being unprepared after what's happened. I barely saw Casey at all, not until the end of my shift, and even then it was just a glimpse. She looked up, saw me, and immediately turned away, full on avoidance, not even a flicker of acknowledgement. My stomach dropped. I turned away too and focused on my work. Amy, one of my managers, was supportive as always but also weirdly vague at first. I guess my face gave away my frustration because she admitted she didn't like the red tape either. She told me to be patient, that everything had to go through the right channels, official steps and all that. Amy let me leave early. She said I should still log my full hours and made it clear she and Chad were actively dealing with everything. I'm pretty sure they were texting about it the entire shift. Amy even walked me to my car and said she'd keep doing that for now, until everything was sorted out. An hour after my shift ended, I got an email from her, with Chad CC'd, confirming that tomorrow Casey would be assigned admin duty in the back office again unless something changed, and that we were to have zero interaction. With the long weekend coming up, I figured all the behind-the-scenes stuff would be happening in the background soon. Then I found out Casey had already presented her evidence. That included the video she'd shown me before, plus another from just the day before, Wednesday. Apparently she filmed me at a local winery during Wine Wednesday. There's a clip of me getting up to grab a bottle a few steps away, and later, another of me standing up and doing a little celebratory dance after winning a tabletop game. That really messed with my head. When did she start recording me? How long has this been happening? I could maybe chalk it up to coincidence once. Okay, sure, same town, whatever. But twice? 2 different days, 2 different places? That's when my uneasiness moved from paranoia to something much more real, unsettling. I'm honestly starting to wonder if this might be something for the police, as some people have suggested. I hate that I'm even considering it, but what other options are there, really? Right now, I'm typing this from a bar. Not the same one as before, thank God. Still local to the school, teachers come here all the time, and it's Thirsty Thursday, with a happy hour discount if you show your school ID. Joy is here with me, and a few more friends are on their way. Joy was even around during my shift, just in case I needed backup. But my head is absolutely on a swivel. So is Joy's. I can't relax the way I usually would. I keep scanning the room, half by instinct, and any time someone gets too close or stands facing me, I look up, expecting to see Casey. It's unnerving, more than anything. I'm still trying to process all of this, and the confusion is driving me crazy. I keep wavering between telling myself maybe this is nothing and then this really doesn't feel normal. For now, I'm documenting everything and following HR's guidance, but I hate how small and watched this is starting to make me feel, and that I feel the need to record every moment, just in case she shows up again. At least I'm safe tonight. I'll be staying at Joy's. I'm not alone, and work is keeping us separated for now. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. For now, unless something absolutely crazy happens, I won't update until this is resolved. Wish me luck. Just now, I replied to a follow-up email from HR. They'd asked some recurring questions. All my answers pretty much boiled down to the same thing. I have never, directly or indirectly, invited Casey anywhere. We aren't friends outside of work, and we've never socialized one-on-one. They also asked if I feel safe at work. Right now, yes, management has taken steps to keep us separated and has been supportive. I haven't been alone at all at work. I'm sticking to their guidance and continuing to document everything, just as instructed. Update 2. At first I thought it was Joy's. She has one on her keys, so we stood in the parking lot like idiots, both of us holding our phones and making our stuff chirp. Hers sang back immediately from inside her bag. Mine kept insisting there was another one nearby. The alert followed me into her apartment, then went quiet, then popped back up this morning while I was driving to work. The map showed a trail that looked uncomfortably like me. I told Amy as soon as I pulled in and asked if she could walk with me around my car. She didn't even hesitate. We both stood there in the cold, me leaned against my cane, while she opened the Find My app and hit play sound. It was so faint at first I thought I imagined it, like a mosquito you can't pin down. Then it chirped again, sharper, from the back end of my car. Amy crouched and looked behind my license plate. "Don't move," she said, and called building security from her headset. Security came with gloves and a little evidence bag, and I watched a stranger pry a white coin off my car like it was nothing more than a gum wrapper. The officer who showed up 10 minutes later was a lot less casual. He photographed it, wrote down the serial number, and took my statement. I gave him the whole thing, the videos, the threats, the exact wording, no cane tomorrow, the way she knew where I was 2 separate nights. He asked if I had any idea who would do this. I said a name. His eyebrows did a little jump I've been replaying all day. I left with a case number and a business card. He left with the air tag. I forwarded everything to HR and Chad. Within an hour, I got a "please come to the office" text from Amy and sat in a tiny room that smelled like toner while she and Chad both conferenced in with HR and legal. They told me 2 things that made my skin go cold. 1. IT pulled access logs from our back office system. Casey pulled my profile 3 times this week, including my emergency contact info, which has Joy's full name and number on it. 2. She'd also printed our full staff schedule, twice, on days she wasn't assigned to scheduling, and those print jobs matched the timestamps of the nights she showed up at the bar and the winery. She's off the schedule effective immediately, no access to the building, and she's been given a written no contact directive through HR. All day I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. It did, in the grossest way. Sometime after lunch, Amy got called to the front by security. Apparently Casey tried to get into the building and made a scene when her badge didn't work. I didn't see it. I was in the back with my recorder going, because of course I was, but security escorted her off property and documented it. 30 minutes later, my personal email pinged with a message from an address I didn't recognize. It was one line: "You didn't have to make this worse." No name. No signature. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to HR and the officer. He wrote back within the hour, added to the file. I asked the officer if they can even do anything with an air tag. He said they can and they do, that Apple will give subscriber information off the serial with the right paperwork, and if that ties back to an individual, it's not just work drama anymore. He also told me to consider an order of protection if I feel unsafe. I'm not there yet, but hearing him say it out loud made my hands shake. Practical things: my phone hasn't thrown the alert again since they took the tag, and I'm not parking in the same spot twice right now. Chad had facilities walk the cameras in the lot in case anything shows up from the last few days. Amy walked me to my car again, and it wasn't performative. She scanned under the bumper with her flashlight like she's done it 100 times for other people. I wanted to cry and laugh and crawl out of my skin at the same time. It's a weird feeling when your boss is better at crisis mode for your life than you are. I'm back at Joy's tonight. We watched her doorbell footage from last week just to torture ourselves. Nothing obvious, but there was a white sedan slow rolling around 1 a.m. 2 nights ago. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's everything. Either way, it's in the officer's inbox now. My pain's at a 7 and keeps flirting with higher. I used the cane all day and still ended up needing breaks. I hate that this is now part of the ledger I have to keep. I hate that I have to add check for tracking devices to my leaving the house routine. But I feel hurt. And not alone. Update 3. The officer called first thing. Apple responded. The AirTag is tied to a specific Apple ID, and that Apple ID is Casey's full name. He said probable cause like it was a hinge the day swung on, and asked if I could come in on my lunch to sign a sworn statement for charges and an order of protection. I texted Amy and Chad. Joy took an early lunch and met me at the station. The statement took forever even though it was just my own life spelled out in black ink. Every quote, every date, every place I remember being seen. He stapled my phone screenshots to the back, her email, the AirTag alert, the HR notice with the no contact line highlighted. He handed me a packet for the courthouse. If you want a temporary order today, go now, he said. I did. The courthouse smelled like dust and copier toner, the way every courthouse does. A clerk showed me where to fill in the addresses, both my jobs, Joy's full name. The judge signed the temporary order an hour later. It bars her from contacting me or showing up within 500 feet of me, my work, Joy's place. There's a hearing date in 2 weeks for a permanent order. The clerk asked if I needed a deputy escort back to my car. I said yes before my brain could say no. When I came out, my phone was lighting up. Chad, we're done here. HR made it official. Termination for gross misconduct, immediate trespass notice on all properties, final check mailed. Legal told me they'd already forwarded the access logs and print jobs to the officer. Amy sent a separate text. I'm parked 2 rows over. Flashers on. I'll walk you. She did. She popped my trunk and checked behind my plate like it was muscle memory. By afternoon, the officer emailed again with a line that made me dizzy and angry and relieved all at once. They served a warrant on the Apple ID, and the subscriber phone number and billing matched Casey's personnel file. He said he'd requested a warrant for her phone, too, because location data will fill in the gaps you can't. He didn't say what the charge would be. He didn't have to. The subtext was loud. This isn't work drama anymore. Security pulled more footage from our lot, and the white sedan from Joy's doorbell showed up in our cameras 2 nights ago idling along the curb by the employee entrance. They couldn't get a clean plate at first, but facilities found a second angle and sent the stills to the officer. It's not her car. It's registered to her cousin. The officer said it doesn't matter if she drove it or borrowed it or asked him to. Tracking someone without consent is the act, and the Apple ID doesn't change owners just because the car does. Late afternoon, a deputy knocked on Joy's door and asked my last name to confirm. He'd just come from Casey's place. Served, he said, tapping the folded paper in his pocket. If she contacts you, call us, don't engage. He didn't say whether she argued. He didn't have to, his jaw said enough. I wish that was the end of the day. It wasn't. At 5, my personal email pinged again. Different burner address this time. Same voice. You are ruining my career. No greeting. No signature. I forwarded it to the officer without a word. He called me instead of writing back. Thank you, he said. That's a violation. We'll add it to the report. Hearing him say the word violation out loud about someone else and not me did something strange to my pulse. Work did a thing I didn't know they could do. Legal sent me a formal trespass letter with my name on it, telling me that if she shows up at any property, it's an automatic 911 call and they'll prosecute. The letter went to her, too. Amy asked if I felt up to a quick, quiet shift at the front desk where I could be behind glass with a panic button. I said yes, then took the bus instead of driving because I couldn't stop thinking about my bumper. She met me at the stop and walked me in. 2 hours into the shift, the winery owner from Wine Wednesday called the work line and asked for me by name. For a second I panicked. Then he said, "Hey, this is weird, but a woman was in here yesterday asking us to pull your receipt and footage. We didn't, but I got her on our camera and sent it to a friend at the bar. They said you were dealing with something. I just wanted to make sure you're all right." He described her. He didn't have to. I thanked him. He emailed the still to the officer. It was her in the white sedan's driver's seat with her head craned toward the door, like she was already rehearsing denial. Joy and I went back to my apartment after my shift with 2 of our coworkers following in their car. It felt symbolic and ridiculous and necessary. I did a slow loop around my own living room like I was trying to remember where my plants go, then sat on the floor and cried into my dog's neck until he huffed and put a paw on my knee like, enough. Joy checked my windows. I checked my phone. No alerts. No chirps. No messages. Just the quiet hum of my fridge. My pain is still up there. Cold air and adrenaline are a bad cocktail. I used the cane all day and still had to sit on a rolling stool to do part of check-in. Amy made a point of saying, "Thank you for the work into the radio where I knew everyone could hear." It mattered. It put something normal back into a place that hasn't felt normal in days. The hearing date is on my calendar in 3 different colors. The officer said to expect a call from the prosecutor next week. HR sent me the number for counseling through our EAP and told me to expense rideshares for a while. I accepted, even though the part of me that swallows things whole wanted to say I'm fine. Update 4. I thought today would be paperwork and waiting. It started that way. The prosecutor called while I was still in line for coffee, voice steady in that I live in emergencies way. She walked me through what they're filing, harassment and unlawful tracking, and a violation if anything else comes in, and asked me to write a short statement about how this has changed my day-to-day. I wrote it on my lunch at Amy's desk, the good pens, the scratchy legal pad. I wrote about the way my phone's chirp lives in my body now, about the way I count the space between cars when I walk to any door. I slid the paper back to Amy and her face softened. She scanned it like she was memorizing a map. They had me at the front again, behind glass with the little cutout at the bottom. Quiet, fluorescent, the kind of shift where you notice the hum of the heater and how the salt from the parking lot crunches under everyone's shoes. My pain had been sitting like a stubborn 6 all day, loud but manageable with the cane and the stool, and I'd settled into the rhythm of badge beep hi thanks. I was halfway through logging a delivery when a shape twitched at the edge of my eye. White sedan. Parked sideways across 2 visitor spots, nose pointed at the doors. Even from behind glass I felt the static of it, the way your body knows a storm before you see the first bolt. The driver leaned forward so far it looked like her neck forgot where to stop. I didn't even think. My hand went to the button under the counter and held it until the light went from red to green. Security answered my buzz like we'd rehearsed. Front. Now. Amy appeared out of nowhere. She didn't ask, she looked where I was looking and her mouth went flat. Radio chatter turned sharp and crisp in my ear. White sedan, visitor lot, and one of the guards slid in front of me like a wall. The sedan idled. The driver put a hand up to shield her eyes. She did not get out. She was close enough I could read the shape of her jaw. I did a weird thing. I counted tiles in the floor to keep my hands from shaking. One of the kids from maintenance popped in, and when he registered what was happening he planted himself behind the guard and stayed. Another body between me and the glass. Blue and red bounced off the entryway like a bad club. One patrol car slid in behind her, then another from the other side, boxing her in neat as a picture. She reached for something on the passenger seat. The officer rapped on her window with a knuckle that said don't. 20 seconds later her door opened and I watched them read from a piece of paper I have a copy of in my own bag. Temporary order. The words bounced at the edge of the intercom and turned into a watercolor, but I didn't need to hear to understand. Hands. Behind. Back. She did that open-mouthed performative shock I've seen in toddlers and bad actors, then flicked a look at the building like she could will me to appear. I sat very still and stared at the water stain on the ceiling. It is shaped like Nebraska. I never want to forget that. When the officers took her, the air deflated. One of the guards exhaled loud enough to fog the glass. I realized my fist was still pressed to the panic button and peeled my fingers off one by one. Amy came around the side and asked if I wanted to go in the back. I did, and I didn't. I stayed. It felt important, in a small and stubborn way, to keep doing my job in the exact place she tried to make feel like a target. It would have been enough, but it didn't stop there. My full-time boss called an hour later. Someone had emailed the general office inbox a neat little odyssey about my fraud, sent from a burner that didn't even bother to change the font. He sounded tired and furious. He said HR had already flagged it, legal had it, and to be aware they'd be monitoring campus entrances, with an extra pair of eyes for a while. He said, "We believe you," before I could ask him to, and I put my head on my forearms and breathed around the knot trying to climb up my throat. The prosecutor called back within the hour to tell me the patrol report was already in her queue. The violation at work meant an easy ad. "It strengthens everything," she said. I know that's cold comfort. But it does. Security found something else when they walked the lot after. Not another tag, God, no, but while they were checking the camera angles they pulled up a clear shot of the plate this time when she pulled in. The cousin's car again. The officer emailed me that he'd spoken to the cousin. He admitted she'd taken it last night. He added a single line that felt like a window opening. The cousin apologized, unprompted, and offered a written statement that she'd been talking about catching you in a lie. It lands different when you see the word catching on someone else's letterhead. It looks small. It looks pathetic. I took a rideshare home because I didn't trust myself not to jump at every creak in the parking garage. Joy met me at my door with takeout and the new season of a show we always pretend to watch ironically. My dog lost his mind in the way that only happens when he smells my shoes 5 seconds before he sees me. We ate on the floor because the couch felt like too much commitment. For a little while, normal existed in the corner, the TV too loud, the dog snoring, Joy telling me the exact correct ratio of hoisin to sriracha like that is a fact you could write down and hand to a judge. The pain comes down in pulses when the adrenaline wears off. It did. My cane was a third arm by the time I got up to brush my teeth. That stupid sticker I put on the handle as a joke last year, little holographic star, caught the bathroom light and threw rainbows on the tile. It made me laugh. It made me cry. I am allowed to want small, ordinary, stupid joys. I wrote that in my victim statement earlier, right between I don't want to check under my bumper anymore and I want to buy wine without scanning the door. I don't know where today lands in the larger story. I know a badge didn't work, then a door opened, then hands found wrists, and I watched from behind glass and did not dissolve. The hearing is still circled in 3 colors. The prosecutor said I might not need to testify now that they've got her on the violation, but I'll be there if she says I do. Amy walked me to the curb when my ride came tonight like always. She checked the back of the car without me asking. She waved at the driver and then looked me in the eye and said, "You did good work today." It sounded simple. It sounded like the floor under all this. I am going to try to sleep. I might actually manage it. Update 5. I woke up to an unknown number and a voice that sounded like a filing cabinet. State compliance. "We received an anonymous complaint questioning your disabled placard," she said, "and we have to verify your eligibility." I tasted metal. I told her I could provide the documentation. She was polite, almost apologetic, and gave me a fax number like it was 1998. I called Amy on the drive-in and she said, "Route it through me," so I did. Scans from my doctor, the state approval letter, the renewal card. I sent the call log to the officer and the prosecutor too. Pattern, the prosecutor said a few minutes later by text. One word. No exclamation point. It still felt like a hand on my shoulder. Arraignment was fast in the way that makes you feel like you imagined it. The prosecutor called from the hallway outside the courtroom and said the judge kept the temporary order, added my full-time job by name, and upped the distance to 1,000 feet. No contact, no third-party contact, no accidental proximity. She pleaded not guilty, posted bail. Conditions are tight, the prosecutor said. If she blinks wrong at you, call. I was back behind glass, the door with the little cutout, the heater hum. Pain at a stubborn 6, cane leaning against the counter like it was posing for a photo. Chad stopped by and slid me a ginger tea like we were in a spy movie. Fax went through, he said, meaning the placard paperwork. Legal's got it. We'll answer anything official so you don't have to. He did the thing where his eyes do a quick sweep of the room without turning his head. He's better at it than I am. At noon a man in a blazer knocked on the glass and held up a folder. My name, he said. My chest did that tight drum with no sound. Amy took the envelope and opened it right there with a pen like it might bite. It was a petition. Her petition. She filed for a restraining order against me. The declaration was 4 pages of word salad, defamation, hostile work environment, obsession, and 2 stills printed from the videos at the bar and the winery. Seeing my own face in grayscale on copy paper made me feel weirdly fictional. At the bottom she'd signed under penalty of perjury. Amy's jaw twitched once and then went still. HR will handle this, she said, already dialing. I emailed the scans to the prosecutor and the officer. The prosecutor's reply came fast, retaliatory, common. We'll be there. The detective called an hour later with the voice people use when they know you're upright but would prefer you were sitting. Search warrant came back on her phone. There's a folder named Proof with screen recordings of my Instagram stories, my work schedule from our system, a map with pins titled bar/wet and winery. There was a screenshot of the Find My app showing AirTag, keys, and a note under it, move to bumper. He said it like punctuation. He also said there's a text thread with her cousin about borrowing the sedan, and a message from a number saved as A. That one said, if her car's not there, check Joy's, which made my stomach drop through the floor and land somewhere under the building. He didn't tell me who A was. He said he didn't need to yet. The quiet cracked again at 3 when my full-time campus security called. Someone had walked into the main office and tried to leave a manila envelope with my name on it at the front desk. They didn't take it. They asked the person to wait and stepped into the back to call security. The person left the envelope and went fast instead. Cameras got the side of a face under a ball cap and the cousins played in 3 different angles on the way out. I didn't open the envelope. Security didn't either. They slid it into evidence gloves and handed it to the officer with a chain of custody sheet like you see in shows that end with a produced by. The officer texted me a thumbs up emoji, which I didn't know he could do, followed by, counts as contact. We'll add it. I didn't breathe for a full 5 seconds and then did too much of it for a while. Somewhere in there, my phone rang with a number I didn't have saved and a voice that sounded like cigarettes and weathered siding. I'm her mother, she said without hello. She's not a bad person. I said, I can't talk to you, and hung up on the second syllable of person. I forwarded the screenshot before my thumb could shake. The officer replied, thank you. Violation via third party. I didn't know relief and fury could share a room that cleanly. There was one small breath of a good thing. The winery owner called again and said, I'm not trying to insert myself, but a guy came in this morning with a phone out asking what time you were here last week. He said he was a process server. We don't hand anything over without a warrant. I thought you'd want to know. He sent the stills. Not a server. The cousin's car again. He put 2 bottles on hold for me with a smiley face I didn't need but appreciated. I'm not picking them up yet. It mattered that he offered. HR did a thing I didn't know they could do squared. Our legal team filed a motion to consolidate the hearing dates so we're not playing whack-a-mole in 2 courtrooms, and Amy told me with her phone flat on the desk between us like a tiny shield. We're sending counsel with you for hers, she said. You will not walk in alone. She didn't ask me if I planned to go. She knows me. Of course I'm going. Some practical involuntary comedy, the envelope at my campus? The officer called later to say it was a printed packet of my own public posts with a neon sticky on top that said fake. The sticky had a perfect thumbprint in the corner. He said he wasn't going to get ahead of himself, that prints aren't magic, but I could hear the smile he wasn't letting loose. He also said the stills she attached to her petition kept their EXIF data, her phone model, the date, the geotagged bar location, because she saved them wrong. He used the phrase self-authenticating and I let out a noise that could have been a laugh or a sob. It sounded like a hiccup. I worked my whole shift. I scanned badges and said hi and pressed the panic button with my palm once by accident when I leaned too far to get a delivery driver's signature because muscle memory is a weird horse. Maintenance taped the emergency number under the desk where my hand goes without me thinking. Amy came by every hour. She didn't hover. She materialized and said, "Water? Or break?" And I'd realize I hadn't sat in 20 minutes. Pain hovered at a 6 and threw sparks when I stood too long. The cane kept catching the light off the sticker and throwing constellations on the floor. Orion on tile. Nebraska on the ceiling. The universe, bureaucratically local. Joy picked me up in a rideshare with a driver who had a stuffed penguin on his dash wearing sunglasses. It felt like being blessed by a small, ridiculous saint. My dog vibrated when I came in and then leaned his full weight into my shins like he was trying to ground me through my bones. We ate cereal for dinner and watched a 15-minute compilation of extremely short cats doing extremely long jumps. The world shrank to a couch, a dog, a spoon clinking a bowl. The prosecutor called once more before 9. She said the judge set a status conference for tomorrow morning because of the new violations. "I'll appear," she said. "You don't need to unless you want to." I asked if the letters in the mom call in the envelope changed anything big. "They make my job easier," she said. "I know that doesn't make yours easier. But it will." She asked how I was sleeping. I told her the truth. Better last night, maybe better tonight. I told her my pain was steady and loud but not winning. She said, "Good," and meant it. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I know the sticker on my cane is still throwing stars. I know Amy will check the bumper without being asked. I know there's a chair behind glass with my name on it and a panic button under my palm that works. I know I'll show up. I keep showing up. That's the whole story right now, beneath all the suddenly legal words and stamped papers. I keep showing up. Story 6. Became a prostitute to a wealthy older woman from my bar for cash to cover my gambling losses. Now I'm trapped in secrecy and shame. So this has been going on for over a month now, but the full weight of the situation only crashed down on me today. I'm 31, and honestly, life has been rough these days. I used to have things going for me in my mid-20s, but alcohol and a gambling habit have pretty much blitzed any stability I had. Now, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, juggling 2 jobs, single, no kids, but still deep in debt. At least I squirreled away some savings into retirement accounts back in the day. I might have to take a loan against it soon just to mop up the mess, but I'm holding out for now. There's this bar right across the street from my apartment that I go to. The regulars there run the full age spectrum. Youngest is 21, oldest is 75. Most of them are friends or at least people I know well enough. Now, Lynn is one of my good friends from the bar, and she's in her 50s. Honestly, she's beautiful, especially for her age. There isn't a single guy at the bar that wouldn't jump at the chance to take her home if she let them. Lynn lives close by, so we started hanging out outside the bar every so often, and it's always a blast when it's just the two of us. Some of her friends, though. Now, they're a different story. Most of her friends are older, single women, big drinkers, loud talkers, and then there's Barb. I'll never forget the first time Lynn introduced us. Barb made it very clear, right from the jump, that she was into me. The problem is, she's older than my mom, and there's just nothing there for me. Zero attraction. But Barb lives close too, and she started showing up at the bar all the time, always sitting right next to me. It was fine at first, she'd buy me drinks, kinda nice, honestly, but then she got clingy, always around, and it became impossible to spend time with Lynn without Barb tagging along. I started to miss the times when it was just Lynn and me. Still, Barb is a riot. She really is funny as hell and a good time, but the fact she wanted me so badly was always hanging in the air, and it felt weird, especially since I was crushing on her friend. 3 weeks ago, I got this text from Barb asking if I could help her with Christmas lights in her apartment. She said I could help myself to her food and drinks. I was a little tanked at the bar when she messaged, and I just lost my last cash gambling, so I figured why not. Her building was new, super nice, luxury all the way. But her actual place? Unreal. Top floor. Massive. High ceilings. Huge windows. Stairs up to her bedroom. I couldn't believe it. I told her flat out how impressed I was, and that's when she started pouring out her life story. Up until now, she'd never really opened up, so it caught me off guard. But yeah, nasty divorce, still tangled up with her ex in court, one daughter is on speaking terms, the other isn't, she's brutally lonely, and then she says she's sexually starved, which she lets hang in the air. I told her I was sorry to hear all that while cracking open a beer, then started putting up her lights. We started laughing, getting tipsy together, really drunk for a Wednesday night, and I still can't explain what got into me, but when she asked if I wanted to shower with her, I just went with it. Didn't even have clean clothes to change into. There we were, showering. I wasn't blown away by her naked body, but for whatever reason, I got hard, and as soon as she noticed, she grabbed me. I told her she could touch me, but I didn't want to have sex. We ended up in her gigantic bed. Seriously, her whole bedroom is like its own apartment. We were watching Young Sheldon when she suddenly asked me, "What would it take for you to perform oral sex on me?" Without thinking, I said, $200 and a frozen pizza. She immediately responded seriously, "I'll give you $400 if you can make me climax." So, she pulled up her nightgown, and I ended up leaving with $400. I really needed the money, so I pushed aside any uncomfortable feelings and went through with it. A week later, Barb texted again, wanting me to come over. Of course, I was back at the bar, out of cash after gambling and half drunk. I went over again, and she asked if I wanted to have sex. I told her I don't have sex without a condom, and she tried to convince me she couldn't get pregnant, but I said that didn't matter. She was cool with that, then countered with oral for oral. It was awkward. I asked if I'd get paid, like last time, and she acted a little embarrassed, said she only paid me because she was so desperate that night. We argued about it for a while, and she offered me $50. I haggled and managed to get $75. God, that conversation felt like it lasted forever. I can barely even tell this without cringing. Later that week, I hit the bar with Lynn, for once without Barb there. It felt great. I mentioned how I'd helped Barb with her Christmas lights, and man, her condo blew me away. That's when Lynn dropped the bomb. Barb is loaded. Like, multimillionaire loaded. Her ex-husband was rich, she inherited family land with her brother and they just sold it for a fortune. Seeing her house in pictures, holy shit, she's absolutely set for life. I started showing up at the bar every night, waiting for Barb to appear or for my phone to buzz with a message from her. But, right then, luck swung my way for once. I hit big on the gaming machines, so I could afford to ignore Barb's calls for a little while. But winnings don't last, not for me, and soon enough I was back to being broke, drunk, and alone. Then Barb called me up again and said she wanted to make a deal. Of course, I staggered over, and when I walked in, her apartment was dark except for the Christmas lights, and she was standing there completely naked. She looked at me and goes, "I need you inside of me, what will it take?" Cringeworthy beyond belief. I mean, I know nothing about how this works, nothing about rates, boundaries, nothing, except I knew Barb was loaded. So, I threw out $1,500. She laughed and said I'd have to last a really long time for that price. Ugh. Then she offered $500, but no condom. That totally threw me. Do women care that much about whether there's a condom or not? Why was that so important to her? I never expected my life to spiral in this direction, but it did, and fast. It all started with Barb. She had always been a presence in our social circle, but I never thought things would escalate the way they did. The first time, I almost couldn't wrap my head around the number she offered me, $800. Without flinching, she paid, and we spent the night together. I can't say much about the sex, except that she was clearly very satisfied. The next day, she texted and wanted me to come over again, for the same deal. 2 days after that, she upped the ante. She asked for the full service, a massage, oral, and an hour in bed. I half-jokingly asked for $5,000, convinced she would turn me down. To my absolute shock, she agreed. Within days, I'd made over $7,000. I settled my rent in cash, stocked the fridge with groceries, had my car fixed, and, for the first time in forever, I could actually buy Christmas presents for people I cared about. Oddly enough, being swept up in this secret hustle had cut into my gambling and drinking. I had less time and less drive to waste money at the bar or sit around sinking booze. For a moment, everything felt manageable. The guilt held at bay by the steady influx of cash. I walked into the local bar beaming. I saw friends, played some pool, and even snuck out back for a joint. For the first time in a long time, life wasn't hanging over me like a storm cloud. And then Barb walked in. She made her way around like she owned the place, greeting everyone, and then sat right next to me, right in front of all my friends. She kissed me on the cheek, leaving me stunned and blushing. My friend's jaws practically hit the ground. As Barb slid into our conversation, my heart pounded like I'd just sprinted a mile. My mind was racing, cheeks burning, and every word I tried to say got caught in my throat. Eventually, I excused myself to go home. Before I could slip away, Barb asked if she'd see me later. I shrugged and replied, "I don't know, hit me up." Then I ran. That was 4 days ago. I haven't been back to that bar since. I know my friends know, or at least have a good suspicion, of what I've been doing. At first, I comforted myself with the idea that if I told them I'd only slept with Barb for her money, they'd somehow understand. But the truth hit me like a punch to the gut. That would make it all so much worse. I'd have to admit I'm a whore, trading sex for cash. An alcoholic, gambling-addicted whore. Now, I'm left thinking I have to let people believe I just got drunk and hooked up with her for fun. That's all the shame I can handle right now. But the guilt is crushing. The secret is eating me alive. I can barely look at myself in the mirror. If I'd just been able to control my drinking and gambling, none of this would have happened. But this is the life I've made, one bad choice after another, until I became the kind of person I never thought I'd be. Update 1. About a year ago, I found myself in a situation I never expected. I started performing sexual favors for money while struggling deeply with alcoholism and a gambling addiction that felt nearly impossible to shake. It was a dark period, but looking back now, it seems like a lifetime ago, though the echoes of those choices still resonate within me. Barb was a key figure from that past. After our awkward run-in at the bar, the one that set so much in motion, she disappeared from my life for almost a month. I couldn't help but imagine she was out there paying someone else for what we used to have. Every day, the thought gnawed at me until I finally learned the truth. She had just been visiting her brother in Arizona for a few weeks. During those weeks when Barb was out of my orbit, I kept quiet. I never talked to my friends who had witnessed our strange encounter at the bar, nor did they bring it up to me. Suspicion hung in the air among us, but nobody treated me any differently, which made it easier to cope. The blend of secrecy and that unspoken understanding gave me the space I needed. One night, sometime late the following January, Barb reached out again. She explained where she had been and asked for help taking down her Christmas lights. I expected there was an ulterior motive, but to my surprise, she actually just wanted her lights taken down. It felt so mundane, almost comically normal. While we worked, I finally explained why I ran away at the bar. She told me that after I left, she told my friends she was just joking and admitted she felt pretty terrible for making me uncomfortable. Apparently, they all just thought I was being a spaz. I asked her to keep things discreet if we ever interacted in public again, but her response caught me off guard. She said she didn't want to continue our previous arrangement. She told me she'd gotten too caught up in the moment, did things she regretted, and ended up feeling pretty uneasy about it all. Barb suggested we could still hook up for fun, but no more exchanging money for sex. It made her feel filthy. I didn't want a friends with benefits situation. Honestly, I'm just not attracted to her, though I didn't say that out loud. Instead, I let her know that friendship was on the table, and that I was only interested in sex within the context of a relationship. I joked that apparently I could make exceptions for money, but otherwise, no. I also told her that if she ever changed her mind, and if I was single, I'd consider it again. That was something new for me, an openness shaped in part by reflections on my past actions. By this time, I was in the midst of a, mostly, dry January with friends. My mind was clearer, my temptations dulled. I had made a big career change, too. The new job paid less, but working one job instead of two, with far less stress, felt like liberation. I'm still a social drinker. I still gamble, but much less and with far less money on the line. After that, Barb reached out to me for services just once in February and once more in March. Now, when we run into each other at the bar, we just smile, share a few words, laugh about nothing in particular. We've both moved on from that weird, complicated part of our lives. At 33, I'm feeling genuinely positive about where I am. Maybe I'm not exactly where I wanted to be, and maybe I could have made different choices, better ones, in past years, but I'm finally happy with who I am, how I treat others, and most importantly, the direction my life is headed. Update 2. 2 weeks ago, a guy in a wrinkled blazer handed me a manila envelope while I was bagging produce. He said my name like he was reading it off a receipt and asked me to confirm the last 4 of my social. I laughed because I thought it was some stupid store audit thing. Then he said, "You've been served," and walked out with a bag of clementines. Barb's ex-husband is dragging her back into court over money, and I'm a name in a footnote. Dissipation of assets, lifestyle analysis, all those phrases that make you feel like you're about to be peeled and examined under a bright light. I went into the break room and stared at the soda machine until my manager asked if I was okay. I wasn't. I wanted a drink so bad my teeth actually ached. I went home and made tea like a 90-year-old and didn't sleep a minute. I called Barb in the morning. She knew. Her voice was weirdly calm, like she'd already cried and wrung it all out. She told me to come over. No candles, no Christmas lights, no music, just her condo with all the shades open and that big window staring at the city like it wanted to jump. She had a binder on the counter thick enough to level a table. Her lawyer had put it together. There were screenshots of lobby logs with my name timestamped, grainy stills from a hallway camera of my dumb face in a beanie, and one photo of me leaving with an envelope that I distinctly remember because it was the night she stuffed it with old 20s and told me not to blow it on the machines. I wanted to crawl under her couch. She said her ex's private investigator had been bored and thorough. She said her lawyer would try to quash the subpoena, but it probably wouldn't work. The thing that made me feel small and stupid was how embarrassed she looked. Not mad. Embarrassed. She kept saying, "I'm sorry," like she was apologizing for having ever needed me. I told her I wouldn't lie. I said it out loud because I needed to hear it in my own voice. I'm not tanked in a shower anymore. I'm not negotiating over a frozen pizza. If I had to go in there and tell them I made a terrible choice for money, then that's what I'd do. She nodded and poured black coffee into a wine glass, because she doesn't own regular cups, apparently. The deposition was in one of those offices where the carpet doesn't quite match the walls. They sat me at a long table with water bottles lined up like trophies, a tiny recorder blinking red, and a woman typing so fast it sounded like rain. Barb was there with her attorney, and across from me was a man with eyebrows that met in the middle. He started politely and then got that slow, syrupy tone, like he was spoon-feeding the word escort into my mouth. He walked me through dates I pretended not to remember and times I wish I could. He asked if money changed hands. I said yes. He asked what I did for it. I said I helped her with things around the house and I kept her company. He asked if the company involved sex. I stared at the condensation running down my water bottle and said, sometimes. He asked how much. I said I didn't keep a ledger. He slid a photo across the table of me in the elevator, hair wet, holding my shoes. I had to close my eyes for a second because it was absurdly on the nose. He smiled like he just remembered a joke. He brought up a text I'd forgotten about. Back in January when Barb and I were trying to be normal people for 5 minutes, I sent her a message saying, I'm only interested in a relationship, apparently I make exceptions for money lol. He read the words exceptions for money out loud and waited, like the lol was going to save me. My face was hot enough to fry an egg. I said it was a bad joke. I said a lot of this was bad. I said I'm trying to be better. The court reporter didn't look up once. After, I parked in a garage and got out of my car and threw up nothing against a concrete wall. Classy. I sat on the curb behind a dented Camry and called Lynn. Not because I had a plan, just because my hands needed something to do besides shake. She was at work and still answered. Tell me where you are, she said, like I'd run away from somewhere. She drove over in 10 minutes, handed me a lukewarm bottle of ginger ale, and didn't make me explain. I told her anyway. I told her everything I hadn't said out loud to anybody. She didn't flinch. She smacked my knee and said, you idiot, in a way that somehow felt like a hug. Then she made me eat a stale pretzel from a vendor outside like that was gonna anchor me to the earth. Barb settled a week later. I don't know the number. What I do know is that a white envelope showed up at my door with a letter from her lawyer asking me to sign a non-disclosure about the deposition specifics and a check to cover my time and disruption. Their wording. It was more money than I've ever seen come from anything legal with my name attached. I stared at it on my kitchen table for an entire evening like it was a snake that could bite if I moved wrong. I walked to Lynn's place and handed her the letter and the check and asked her to tell me what to do. She raised an eyebrow, handed them back, and said, do what lets you sleep. I signed it. I deposited it. I didn't go near a bar that night. I booked a therapy appointment instead and sat in a waiting room with a fish tank and a stack of children's magazines because apparently my brain is 8 years old when it's nervous. I said sex and money and alcohol out loud to a stranger while staring at a watercolor painting of a canoe. It was the dumbest and smartest thing I've done in months. A small thing happened a couple days after the settlement that scrambled me more than all of it. I was leaving the grocery store and a woman stopped me in the parking lot and said my name. She had Barb's eyes. It was her older daughter, the one I'd never met. She told me she knew who I was because she'd seen me in a folder she wasn't supposed to see. She said her mom felt humiliated and she felt angry and it was complicated and gross. Then she surprised the hell out of me. She told me thank you for not getting up on that stand and turning it into theater. She said, thank you for not torching her mom to make yourself look clean. I told her I wasn't clean. She made a face and said, nobody is, and walked away with a baguette under her arm like we hadn't just said the quiet part out loud in a parking lot shaped like a figure 8. I saw Barb 3 nights ago at the bar for the first time since all this. I was nursing a club soda like a kid at a wedding. She had her usual shiny thing going on, big hair, boots, red lipstick that stands out from across the room. We didn't make a show. She clinked her glass against mine and said, hey, and I said, hey, and that was it. Lynn slid up next to me and bumped my shoulder like we were in on the same joke. Maybe we are. Maybe we're all ridiculous and trying not to be. I don't know what this does to my karma or my ledger with the universe. I know I haven't gambled in 2 months. I know I'm sleeping through the night without waking up at 4 a.m. in a cold sweat and counting my sins. I know I'm weirdly good at putting up and taking down Christmas lights, if anybody needs that skill. The rest, I'm letting it be messy without letting it run me. For now, that's enough. Update 3. I accidentally started a business. It sounds like one of those Facebook ads where a guy with veneers tells you to monetize your passion, but mine is ladders and zip ties and not dying. It happened because my produce manager taped a fluorescent green index card to the community corkboard that said, holiday lights hung. Fair price. Sober ladder guy. He wrote my number crooked and underlined sober 3 times. Lynn took a picture and sent it to 3 people and then those 3 people sent it to their building threads and suddenly my phone was vibrating like I dropped it in a beehive. It started with a dentist whose office smells like cotton candy and fear. He wanted icicle lights along his awning and a Santa clinging to the chimney like he'd got lost on the way to a CrossFit class. Then a bank branch manager who kept saying brand cohesion while I hung warm white bulbs around a shrub that looked like a meatball. Someone's aunt who lived in a townhouse with a cat that kept head-butting my tool bag like it contained tuna. I borrowed the store's box truck that normally moves pallets of onions and spent my mornings threading extension cords through gutters and my evenings drinking Gatorade on my floor because every muscle in my body had formed a union and gone on strike. The money hit my account with little ping noises and for the first time in a while none of them made me flinch. I bought a real tool belt instead of the broken canvas thing I got from a yard sale when I was 22. I bought a headlamp that made me look like a miner but meant I didn't have to hold a flashlight in my teeth. I bought a pair of work gloves that didn't have someone else's name sharpied on them. I also bought a graph paper notebook and wrote taxes on the cover like a grown-up. When you've mostly used money to punish yourself, spending it on a receipt printer feels like a religious experience. 2 jobs in, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize asking if I could take down lights in late January and could I please come by to give an estimate, and also did I have time for coffee right now. I stared at it for a minute with that awful deja vu feeling. I typed "who's this?" and it told me without the little typing bubbles. Barb. She added a smiley face, which she never does. It made my stomach do a weird roller coaster dip. Her condo was the same and not. The tree was still up, but the ornaments were in neat lines on the dining table like tiny soldiers being mustered out. There were cardboard boxes with printed labels. Kitchen. Bedroom. Office. A new one. Donate. She had coffee in wine glasses again because apparently mugs are for peasants. She waved me in like we'd seen each other yesterday and not whatever the messy galactic timeline actually is. "I'm selling," she said, like she'd cut off her own hair on purpose. She leaned back against her countertop and it creaked a little under her bracelet. "Arizona. My brother's place. I'm tired of winters and lawyers." I didn't know what to do with my face, so I looked out the window where the city was pretending not to listen. "That's big," I said, "because I am a poet." "Big and boring," she said. "They make you sign forms for forms. The only exciting part is I get to throw things out." She nudged a stack of cookbooks with her toe. "Do you want a crock pot?" She was weirdly gentle with me. There were gaps where there didn't used to be gaps. We didn't mention January in a deposition room. We didn't mention a daughter in a parking lot. She asked about the ladder jobs and made me explain transformer wattage like she hadn't ever ignored every safety label in her life. She laughed at sober ladder guy for longer than it deserved. I told her I was proud of myself and didn't even choke on it. I measured her balcony and the weird arch above the big window because she wanted me to take it all down right after New Year's. No last-minute romantic gestures. She wrinkled her nose at herself and said it was a joke, and I told her it was actually a pretty good one. We both accepted the lie that it was only a joke and let it sit like a polite guest between us while the city did its winter glare. On my third job, a man in a camel coat asked me if I did inside installations. He was wearing cologne that smelled like the rich section of a magazine. He used the word companion like it needed capital letters. He did it with the same syrupy tone the eyebrow lawyer had used when he said escort into a little blinking recorder. My mouth filled with the taste of powdered sugar from the donut I'd shoved down in the truck. I told him I only do windows and trees. He smiled like we were speaking in code. He offered an obscene number that could have paid for new brakes and a decent mattress. I heard my own voice say, "I'm booked solid." I left his foyer and sat in my truck and timed my own breathing, which is something my therapist taught me that makes me feel like I'm inflating a bicycle tire but works anyway. I texted Lynn that I'd almost done something dumb and she sent me 16 knife emojis, and then the knife emojis turned into a voice message that said, "Come over for soup before you pass out on your floor." I went. Her apartment smells like basil and laundry. We ate soup. She put her feet on my legs and said, "You get to pick one holiday movie that isn't Die Hard," and I made a big speech about art and then put on Muppet Christmas Carol because I'm weak. Somewhere between the ghosts and that little rat who's always worried, she took my hand the way you'd take a fragile thing and rested it on her thigh, and neither of us commented on it. Her knee was warm. My brain didn't sprint toward anything. It just sat down politely and watched puppets sing. A week later, I was on Barb's balcony at dusk, wrapping the last line of warm white around a rail while my headlamp made weird halos in my breath. A security guard came out to smoke. He was new, except he wasn't. It took a second for the till to click. He was the pie with the bored eyes who'd studied my beanie on grainy footage and circled my name in ballpoint. He looked different in a uniform. He tilts his head, squints, and then he smiles like you do when you recognize someone out of context and your brain writes the caption a beat late. "Hey," he said, and held up his cigarette like a peace flag. Small world. It was the kind of line you hear in a sitcom right before a laugh track, but there was no audience, just the roar of traffic 6 floors down and the zip-zip of my cable ties. I said hey back. He asked if Barb was around and I said she was doing battle with a packing tape dispenser inside. He asked if I still worked at the grocery store and I said yeah, mornings, and ladder guy afternoons. He nodded like he was checking off boxes and then he surprised me by saying, "For what it's worth, I told them you were decent." It landed somewhere soft. He flicked ash into the night and elbowed the railing like it was an old friend. "It's all numbers to them," he said. "Hours in, hours out. They forget we're people." Then he made a face like he'd accidentally said something honest in a place where he wasn't supposed to and clapped his hand on the rail twice, like that made it casual. He went back inside. I stared at the empty spot in the air where his smoke had been and then I tightened another zip tie like an adult with a plan. On New Year's Eve, Lynn and I went to the early showing of Nothing. We watched people in puffy coats argue about reservations through a plate glass window and pretended it was theater. At 9, we went back to her place and watched the cheap fireworks through her blinds and split a root beer like we were 75. She leaned her shoulder against mine. My phone buzzed. It was Barb. A picture of her living room, half-boxed, lights still on. "Come say goodbye," it said, no dots, no extra hearts, just that. I stood in Lynn's kitchen and looked at the little blinking bubble in my brain where bad decisions used to live, and it was quiet. I typed, "I'll come take the lights down on Tuesday. Safe trip." It took me 20 minutes to hit send even though it was 8 words long. Lynn didn't ask. She put the rest of the soup in my hands in a Tupperware and said, "Leave the bowl on the porch if you forget your keys." We kissed once at her door, quick and ridiculous, like something out of a movie that doesn't have the budget for a second take. It felt like biting into a grape that you were sure was going to be sour and it wasn't. Barb left a week later. I took down her lights with my headlamp and my new gloves and that sharp little pain in my chest that you get when something is over, and it didn't wreck you. She left me an envelope with a check for the job and a note on a torn page from a legal pad that said, "Get a normal coffee mug." It made me laugh in a way that made my throat hurt. I cashed the check and bought a navy blue mug from the hardware store with a chip in the handle. It holds heat. It's ugly. It's mine. I haven't been perfect. The other night, I walked past the machines at the corner bar and my hand did that itchy thing it does. I stood there long enough that the Rising Jackpots font looked like a foreign language. I pulled out a crumpled 20 and then I put it back in my wallet and then I went out to the alley and counted to 60 with my eyes on the dumpster until my heartbeat stopped sounding like it was coming from elsewhere. I went home and ate cold soup out of the Tupperware and watched that weird paint-peeling documentary Lynn swears is calming and fell asleep on the couch with my headlamp still on my forehead, like a campsite ghost. My therapist says closure is a myth we invented because we hate open tabs. She says you can have 1,000 windows up in your life and still get your work done if you don't keep clicking. I don't know about myths, but I know this: there is a coiled strand of cheap LED in my hands most days, and when I plug it in and it does its stupid little warm thing, people's faces change. They look up. They smile in that involuntary way that isn't for anyone's camera. I am in those moments, not an exhibit or a warning sign or a legal footnote. I am a guy on a ladder who can get down whenever he wants. I didn't know how much I missed that version of me until he showed back up with a box of zip ties and a tax notebook. If anybody needs their lights put up or taken down, I'm booked through the 15th, but I can make space if you feed me soup and don't mind that I hum along to the radio badly. If you're the man in the camel coat, no, I don't do inside installations. If you're the woman with Barb's eyes, tell your mom I got a mug. It's ugly and it works. That feels about right. Update 4. I lit a wedding with a $99 generator and stubbornness while the bride's uncle kept asking if I'd ever been electrocuted, like he was hoping I'd say yes so he could have a story for the cigar circle. It wasn't supposed to be my wedding. I was doing patios and restaurants now. Off-season string lights are apparently a year-round personality. But then the woman with Barb's eyes called and asked if I could make a barn look like it was expensive on purpose. I thought it was a prank until she said, "I know you like warm white and you hate those blue-white bulbs," which is a creepy level of specific to get from a folder you weren't supposed to see. We met at the venue on a Tuesday while the owner showed us where the GFCIs live and told us not to plug anything into the outlets marked beer only, which is a sentence they should print on t-shirts for that place. The barn smelled like hay and lemon cleaner and somebody's teenage memories. She had a swatch of napkins she cared about like they were sacred texts. Soft, she kept saying, tapping the wood beams. Not twinkly romantic, just soft. I nodded and wrote soft in my graph paper notebook like I was going to test for it in a lab. I told her I didn't do inside installations and then I did inside installations because apparently romance is just electricity you can dim. I asked if her mom would be there like I was asking about the weather. "She's flying in from Arizona," she said. "She's bringing mugs." I almost laughed out loud. I told her I'd be there as a vendor, not a guest. "You still get A+1, she said, like that solved anything. My fiancé thinks everyone should get A+1 because it lowers the risk of someone crying in the bathroom. I texted Lynn from the parking lot, "You wanna watch me zip tie electricity while men in suspenders say vibes?" She sent back a picture of her boots and said yes. The day of, the sky couldn't decide if it was going to weep or perform. The humidity sat on my shoulders like a toddler that wouldn't get down. I wore a tie over my tool belt because I am elegant now, apparently. Lynn showed up in a dress with a cardigan and the boots, hair up like she had clocked wind patterns. She handed me a thermos of soup and kissed my jaw while I was on the second rung and I nearly fell because we're idiots who forget about gravity. Then everyone I didn't want to see and had already accepted that I would see showed up. The pie/security guard waved at me like we were meeting on purpose. "Not smoking tonight," he said, patting his pocket in apology. The ex-husband walked in with a face like he was auditing the air. The eyebrow lawyer existed in a corner, talking to a napkin. I was winding a run of Edison bulbs around a beam when Barb came through the side door with Arizona on her skin and hair lighter than it used to be. She wore sandals and a dress that would blow up if the wind got ideas. She looked around like she'd left something on a counter and couldn't remember which home it was in. Our eyes did that two-step where you decide whether you're going to be adults or ghosts. We went with adults. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I said. "You got a mug?" She smiled in a way that had a past tense. "6, she said, tilting her head toward a bag with handles. I overcorrected. Story of my life. We didn't hug. It felt perfect. At 5:13, the DJ plugged his subwoofer and his laser fog machine into the same strip as the uplights, because of course he did, and the GFCI took one look at our collective ambition and fainted. The barn went quiet in that specific way where 50 people inhale at once and pretend it's fine. The bride was 6 minutes away in a car full of Tool and hairspray. The owner started talking about the panel like it was a moody teenager. I said I got it, even though I didn't, because my body is apparently composed of this sentence now. I ran a line out the back door to my little generator that's technically for camping and emotionally for nights like this. I split the dance floor and the bar on separate circuits like a divorce settlement. The DJ made a noise when his fog machine stayed red that I think came from deep evolutionary history. I apologized to the fog machine with my eyes and told him he could have it after the first dance. We were back on in 3 minutes and the string lights hummed like a throat clearing. Soft enough? I asked the bride's eyes when she came to check with a bouquet strangling her circulation. She blinked tears back in a way that made me feel like I should look at my shoes. Perfect, she said. It looks like how it felt when I decided yes. I pretended cable ties needed me at that exact second so I could breathe without crying in a barn in front of men in bow ties. During the ceremony, I stood by the open door with a rag and that stupid navy blue mug because it was still too hot to hold without a handle. Lynn slid her hand into my back pocket like she was checking I'd brought my wallet. The pie nodded at me from the L like he was counting heads from habit. The ex-husband's jaw moved like it was chewing a list. Barb dabbed at her eyes with a napkin that said their names in gold like that would make grief and pride and regret match the color scheme. When the officiant said you may kiss, the sun did that cliché thing and fell through the slats at an angle my headlamp could only dream of, and I didn't ruin it for myself by thinking the word fade out loud. The eyebrow lawyer cornered me near the bathrooms during cocktail hour and told me the lights were tasteful. His face didn't know how to make that compliment without also filing it. Thanks, I said, with my hands in my pockets so they wouldn't punch a wall. He asked what I charge. I said, it depends, and it felt like magic to say those words and mean dollars and not blood. At the first dance, the bride's uncle with the cigar face tried to plug a chocolate fountain into my outdoor rated strip because he is an agent of chaos. I intercepted like a defensive back and he fell in love with me on the spot. You saved the chocolate, he said, sincerely, and went to tell 3 men named Tony that I was a genius. After dinner, Barb found me by the service door where I was pretending to investigate a knot because the feelings were running around the barn like dogs off leash. She handed me a small box, nothing heavy, just a weight in cardboard. Don't open it now, she said, and it wasn't flirty or loaded, it was just adult, like handing someone their mail. I'm good, she said, like she had to practice those 2 words more than once in a mirror. I hope you are. I said I was okay, which is my version of good. We looked at the dance floor where her daughter was laughing into her new husband's neck and it felt like watching a house catch fire in reverse. I danced with Lynn to a song we both pretended to hate. She put her forehead against my cheek and my brain did not try to monetize a single second. When the DJ cut the cake music to ask for more power for his fog, I shoot him with my mug and he grinned like we'd survived something together. Maybe we had. The ex-husband left early, which is the most charitable thing I can say about him. The pie helped me coil cords at the end and told me I should charge more. You don't get paid for the minutes it took, he said, you get paid for the panic you prevented. Then he flinched at his own wisdom again, like honesty was a bee he'd swallowed by accident. Back at Lynn's, we sat on her floor with our shoes off and ate leftover meatballs out of a bakery container with toothpicks. I opened Barb's box. It was a mug that said, World's Okayest Installer in a font that tried very hard not to be whimsical. I laughed in a way that made my ribs ache and set it next to the ugly navy one in her sink. It looked right there, ridiculous and fine. Lynn took my hand and placed it on her stomach like she was letting me hold a small, quiet animal. You did good, she said. My shoulders let go of something I didn't know they were holding. 2 mornings later, the venue emailed and asked if I wanted to be on their preferred vendors list. The city parks department called about winter, if you're still laddering. The woman with Barb's eyes sent a photo of the barn at midnight, all our lights still warm, everyone gone. It smelled like sugar, she wrote. I haven't gambled. I haven't even hidden outside to press my head against a concrete pillar and count. I keep plugging in strands and watching people look up like the world remembered to be kind for a second. There are still days where my hands itch and my brain suggests a shortcut to an old ruin, but then Lynn hands me a thermos and I go find a beam to wrap and the urge dissolves into something that doesn't need my attention. I'm writing this at my tiny table with a receipt printer humming like a content insect and 2 mugs that don't match, one of which announces that I am okay at what I do, which turns out to be precisely the bar I wanted to clear. I am a guy with a ladder who didn't climb into a window he wasn't invited into. I am a guy who can say no in a foyer that smells like expensive cologne. I am a guy who can say yes to dancing badly in soup. If you need your patio to look like a decision you're glad you made, I've got zip ties and terrible radio harmonies. If you're bringing mugs from Arizona, I've got shelf space. The lights come down and go up and come down again. It's not closure. It's a switch I flip, on purpose, and watch what happens.